Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast.
Hello there from New York. How are you all? Welcome to the What Bitcoin Did podcast, which is brought to you by the mighty Kraken. I'm your host, Peter McCormack, and today I've got an interview with the host of the BBC's Missing Cryptoqueen podcast, Jamie Bartlett, discussing the OneCoin Scam. But before that, I do have a message from my show sponsors. So firstly, we have the mighty Kraken, the best place to buy and sell Bitcoin, and they recently made this huge announcement. Kraken has launched their first mobile app. Have you checked it out yet? Have you downloaded Kraken Pro and had a play? Kraken Pro delivers all the security features you love about the Kraken exchange in a beautiful mobile-first design for advanced crypto trading on the go. So it doesn't matter where you are, whether you are in Starbucks grabbing a coffee or you're just sat at home watching Liverpool on the TV, you can trade Bitcoin on the go. The app has got so much packed in. You've got real-time price updates, multiple charting and order book display options. You've got advanced trading features. You can view a complete history of your orders, trades, positions, deposits and withdrawals. And finally, the app comes with a deep and liquid set of over 100 cryptocurrency markets, fees as low as 0%, and 24/7, 365 global customer support. Kraken have smashed it with this app, so make sure you download it. Make sure you go and check it out. It's available for the iPhone and Android. Just search for Kraken Pro, which is KrakenPro. Next up is BlockFi, the amazing BlockFi, the future of Bitcoin and financial services, and they've been crushing it for the whole year now. So many cool things been happening with them. As you know, I am a customer of their interest accounts. I love getting my Bitcoin interest every month. I love it that my Bitcoin is working for me. And while I'm here in New York, I will be popping in to see the team today. I'm going to be catching up with them, finding out what's coming soon. But recent announcements, they've dropped all minimum deposits for interest account holders, so you no longer have to have a minimum deposit amount in Bitcoin, Ether or GUSD balances to earn interest. They've also removed the early withdrawal penalty and are now offering one free withdrawal per month for all clients. And add to this, they have BlockFi Flex, where you can choose to receive interest payments in the currency of your choice. BlockFi are definitely killing it. If you're interested in checking out, head over to blockfi.com, which is BLOCKFI.com. Okay, so onto the show today, and I was very happy to get Jamie Bartlett on the show, who made the Missing Cryptoqueen podcast for the BBC. I actually was aware of his work previously. He did a 2-part documentary for the BBC called The Secrets of Silicon Valley, which we recorded a separate podcast as well for the Defiant show, which that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. But for this one, I wanted to talk about his investigation into the OneCoin Ponzi scheme and its missing founder, Ruja Ignatova, who exit scammed the project in 2017 and has not been seen since. No one is 100% sure how much money went into the OneCoin Ponzi. There are figures ranging from like $5 billion to $15 billion, which is absolutely amazing because, you know what, I was aware of the project, I'd heard of it, but I'd just written it off as a scam. I didn't really know much of the detail until I listened to Jamie's podcast. So yes, this is really interesting to me for a number of reasons. I think everyone in the space knows scams exist, but the term scam is used so widely, it kind of clouds things like OneCoin. You'll hear maximalists who call anything but Bitcoin a scam, so even Ethereum is a scam. But I don't know, I'm kind of in a different place. I think there's scams, misguided projects, and legitimate projects. And for me, the only legitimate project I care about is Bitcoin, but I don't believe that everything is a scam. I do believe some people out there legitimately trying to do something with a blockchain, even if the idea is stupid. But this is entirely different from OneCoin and, you know, other scams we've had like BitConnect and Plus Token, which are designed just to steal money from people. So as I said, I remember when OneCoin was operating and, you know, I don't really remember people talking about it too much. Like, I would see the odd mention and it was usually attached to the word scam. And to me, you know, having a look at their website now, it clearly is a scam. I mean, it's so obvious to someone like myself and probably for almost anyone who listens to this. But I think a lot of people forget or take for granted that these scams aren't aimed at Bitcoiners who can spot the bullshit straight away. They're aimed at people who don't understand the terminology or the tech and have maybe read about Bitcoin and people getting rich from it. And, you know, when they see a story like, oh, this is the new Bitcoin, this is like buying Bitcoin when it's $1 or $10, and they feel like they've missed the boat and can easily get sucked in. So when scams like this arise again, should the Bitcoin community do more? Should we be more vocal in calling things out? You know, should we be here to protect people? It's, you know, something I go back and forth on. Some people say just get wrecked. Others say, no, you should protect people. Additionally, on the show, I got another couple of people, so it's quite a long one. There's 2 appendix interviews in it. I got 2 people who were featured in the podcast as well. So firstly, McAdam, who fell for the scam. She invested thousands of pounds and was actually recruiting her friends into the project. And I think between her and her friends, they invested around 250,000, which is obviously a huge amount of money. And, you know, if you listen listened to the podcast, I ended up feeling very sorry for Jen. She's clearly very upset with what happened. But there's also Tim Curry, who is a Bitcoiner who was trying to help people who were caught up in the scam. And it was Tim who, after 3 months or so, managed to finally convince Jen that this was not a legitimate project. So, yeah, they're on the show as well. It's a great podcast. I recommend everyone checks it out. And I really did enjoy this chat with Jamie. He's a great guy. And massive thanks to him for coming on the show and putting me in touch with Jen and Tim. And if you've got any questions, got any feedback, you can hit me up. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Also, just a note, I am out in New York. I'm recording interviews for Defiance and What Bitcoin Did. Tomorrow I'm off to Cleveland, Ohio, and then I'm going to be off to Indianapolis to record with my buddy Luke Martin, which is 2 years after we recorded the very first show for What Bitcoin Did. So that's very cool. And then I'm probably going to be heading to San Francisco, LA, maybe Atlanta, Washington, Houston, Austin, Hawaii. I'm not sure on the full plans yet. Just keep an eye on Twitter if you want to come and hang out. Anyway, any questions, feel free to hit me up. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Morning, Jamie. How you doing?
Not bad. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for coming on the show. So I've over the last few days, I've done the whole of the Missing Cryptoqueen and found it fascinating. And on my podcast, I rarely step out of the area of Bitcoin, but there is certainly a Bitcoin story in this. It certainly feels attached to Bitcoin. So can you just tell me, as a starting point, how you got into this, how you even came to the point where you're going to make this?
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book back in 2014 called The Darknet, which had a lot about Bitcoin in it because I was really interested in the Silk Road, the drug site, of course, and how it all worked. And that's got me into Bitcoin, got me into crypto-anarchism. And I've just found the whole subculture amazing. And crypto-anarchism to me was, and the cypherpunks more generally, one of the very few original political ideas of the last 50 years. So I was immediately fascinated by it all. And so then I just kept an interest in cryptocurrencies more generally. But not deeply, deeply like you, but just so interesting to keep a sort of tabs on what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then about a year ago, this BBC producer gets in touch with me and says, I've just heard about this new cryptocurrency. Well, not new, but I've heard about it for the first time. It's called OneCoin. I think it's a massive scam. And the weird thing about it is that the founder has been missing for nearly 2 years. And I was like, what? Well, like Satoshi Nakamoto missing. Like, no, totally different. A different missing founder, as in the authorities are looking for her as well. And I'm thinking, this is a crazy story, isn't it? So I start looking into it with her, and we together come up with this. I mean, she was the one that discovered it, if you like. I mean, it's out there, but she discovered it and thought, this is an amazing story. Came to me as someone that writes about this, and then we basically turned it into this 8-part podcast series, and it was the strangest thing I've ever worked on by a country mile. I still can't believe it's not fictional.
Yeah, I mean, so an interesting thing about this is I do work in cryptocurrencies. I've been in the space since end of 2016, so come up to 3 years. I knew OneCoin was a scam. I've heard of it as a scam, but I've never really even looked at it because it's just like, oh, that's a scam, forget about it. I did not realise the size of it.
Right, so this is actually, we're immediately into one of the most important points about this, and where I think there is an overlap with Bitcoin, actually. So for people who'd never heard it, it's basically, I mean, it's 2014. This woman turns up, Ruja Ignatova. I've got the next Bitcoin. Bitcoin's old, it's technical, it's arrogant. I've got Bitcoin for the mass market. And then within 3 years, I mean, at least 4 billion euros is invested into it. We'll get into the details of how it worked, maybe. And then late 2017, she disappears and hasn't been seen since. That's basically the story.
Yeah.
And we try and find her and find out how the hell this all worked and how she pulled it off. The first question I had when I heard about it was, oh, there must be loads written about this. Must be all over the news. Hardly a thing. And I think it was because the crypto people like you call yourself a crypto person, wouldn't you?
Bitcoin person.
No? A Bitcoin person.
Yeah.
Okay, it's quite an important difference, but yeah. But the people that are interested in either Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, I think most of them, and I even spoke to Tone Vase about it briefly.
He just literally just texted me.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Looked at this and said, well, that's a ridiculous Ponzi scam. I'm not even going to, I don't even need to mention it because crypto people will see through this in a heartbeat.
Well, there's so many gaps between There's so many things between Bitcoin and that. Like, there's other stuff which do have blockchains,
Well,
which are
yes,
also scams.
yes.
It's so
It's
far
so
on the
far
scam.
away for the crypto
Yeah.
world that they're like, this is probably best described as a pyramid scam
Yeah.
that should be covered by the mainstream press because it's not even our thing, really.
Yeah.
But the mainstream press, who understands nothing of cryptocurrency, really, saw it and thought, oh, that's a crypto story. I guess Cointelegraph or someone's going to
Yeah.
deal with that. You know, it's not really for us in the financial press because it's one of those niche stories about crypto scams. I don't really understand it properly. And it kind of fell between the cracks. And so no one really covered it because you guys thought this is so ludicrous and stupid, it's not worth my time. The mainstream press can't tell the difference between can I call it a legitimate cryptocurrency scam and a straightforward pyramid scheme scam.
Yeah.
And so they just they put them all together, and that's why it's so little reported on.
Well, there's a scale. So I have a scale because scam is so used now. It's kind of lost meaning, and I think people need to really get a grip on this because there are people who believe that everything that isn't Bitcoin is a scam, and I separate it. I say there's Bitcoin, then there's projects which are legitimately trying to do something, but will probably fail on a stupid ideas.
Yes.
I put Ethereum into that basket because from everything that's been explained to me by the technical people I know and trust, this thing won't scale. It's just a stupid
But they're not
idea.
setting out to scam people with
No,
it.
well, this is where it becomes interesting. So I'll come back to
Then we're
this.
in the grey area.
Well, this is where it becomes interesting. There are the scams of people who are just creating a cryptocurrency for the sake of it to exit scam, and then there's stuff like OneCoin. Where it becomes interesting is because whilst I don't believe Ethereum is a scam, and I don't believe they set out intentionally to create a scam, I do believe there are people working on it who must be having second thoughts, who are now thinking, hold on, I'm not sure we can deliver this. Or they're not being objective enough. They're not really... Because it's very weird that everybody who's in the Bitcoin world who's got no interest in Ethereum fundamentally says this is stupid, this is dumb. And then all the people in Ethereum say, no, this is fine. So what I think is happening, and the question I was therefore going to go for you next with, is that did they set out to create a scam in 2014? Was it, here is our plan, we're going to create this fake coin, sell packages, and then we're going to exit with it? Or is it like, oh fuck, Bitcoin's cool, let's create a coin, we'll start here, and then it just became a scam? And that's what I didn't know.
Yeah, you know what, weirdly, that is actually a harder question to answer than I thought. Yeah. But people have got to firstly understand that it's set out, the best way of describing it is a classic multi-level marketing product.
It's aloe vera.
It's Avon ladies, and what's the massive one? Herbalife.
Herbalife, yeah.
Like, so you recruit friends, and you have to directly sell to them, and then they recruit friends, and you make a cut on or a commission on what they sell, and the pyramid gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And multi-level marketing is not illegal, but if there's no real product to sell and all the money you're making is through recruitment of other people to sell, then it's called a pyramid scheme, and then it is illegal.
But that's funny. So I was in the car with my son listening to you, and he's everywhere we go. And for the last week, him and my daughter have had to hear you, right? And so my son was like, "Well, what is this?" And I was trying to explain him the difference between multi-level marketing, pyramid, and Ponzi.
Yeah. And
the best place I could get to is that it's probably okay in the world of MLM if there's a product you physically get. You get a vitamin or something. Whereas if it's a financial product, it's probably more in the world of Ponzi/pyramid. Is that a fair assumption?
That's not bad. Yeah, I'd say. I mean, the illegal pyramid scams are all Ponzi schemes because they often will pay out commissions based on new recruits coming in and paying in, which is what a Ponzi scheme is. Mm-hmm. But not all Ponzi schemes have a pyramid selling structure because if Bernie Madoff was a Ponzi scheme, it wasn't sold through pyramid-style marketing. No. It was just taking money from people and paying off investors at insanely high rates, early investors. So not all Ponzis are pyramids, but most pyramids are Ponzis. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense.
So OneCoin is kind of all of them together. A fake cryptocurrency is the product that they are selling through a pyramid scheme.
Yes.
So they started off, it was always the plan that this would be sold through a pyramid selling structure because the people involved in it are not crypto specialists. They are multi-level marketing specialists.
But do you believe they wanted to create a cryptocurrency?
Well, my personal view is that originally they may have thought we'll see if this works. We'll pretend we have a blockchain and an amazing new cryptocurrency. And if it gets big, maybe we can turn it into a real one. So they started off without having a blockchain, without any currency, and they were just using an SQL database to essentially tell people this is how much money is in your account, and you've just bought 100 coins, and that's the price of the coin, so that's how much money you've got now in your account. And one day, in 6 months, but then it was 12 months, but then it was 18 months, you'll be able to trade them on the markets like Poloniex, how do you say it?
Poloniex.
Yeah. Or Kraken or wherever one day, and then you can get all of that dollar or euros back for your amazing coins, because this is going to be huge. And I think what actually happened was that maybe they had an idea that we'll see if this works, we'll see if it spreads, and it's kind of maybe a small scam, but is anyone going to really notice a few million here or there disappearing? There's loads of these ICOs going on all the time. But because it was such an amazing product, like imagine how difficult it is to sell vitamins to your friends and family, to get commissions. And there's loads of programs about how hard multi-level marketing is, and people don't ever make money or very few, maybe 3 or 5% make money at the top, because it's very hard to recruit enough people to start selling you. I mean, I remember my mum was an Avon lady for a while.
My mum was, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, cool, yeah. So the stress of getting your mates around and having to sell them, I mean, it's really difficult. But what if you could say to them, I'm not going to sell you Tupperware, I'm going to sell you the next Bitcoin that's going to go up in value. So, I mean, you're basically changing pounds into another form of money that's going to keep getting more valuable. What an amazing product to sell through multi-level marketing. The genius of this was that Dr. Ruja Ignatova, who created this, along with another multi-level marketer called Sebastian Greenwood, thought, well, what if we did multi-level marketing but with a fake cryptocurrency? It's going to spread it got so big so quickly. One day it's 10 million. A month later, it's 100 million, and they're thinking, "Oh my God, this is getting too big. We're out of control." And it was too many people started investing, so they had maybe an idea to build a blockchain and try and put the old transactions or the old money that they'd been selling to people onto a blockchain. But it had gotten so big so quickly, and they didn't really understand the technology behind it. And then suddenly they couldn't do that, so they couldn't create a real cryptocurrency at all. And then so they just had to keep selling these Ponzi points that you'd be sort of pushing around the system.
So they never actually created the blockchain?
No, and they tried to. I think they did try to. But to the best of my knowledge, they never did. Because let's imagine you had, 10,000 people who'd suddenly bought your fake cryptocurrency that was still on an Excel file, basically. Mm-hmm. You have 10, I have 100, my neighbour's got 50 or whatever. And suddenly it's got 100,000 people and 100,000 entries, and you've got to somehow build a blockchain that would then put all of those in very quickly so you could carry on the blockchain.
No, you could do that.
Yeah, but it would take a very long time. It would be quite difficult.
Well,
and if it's growing incredibly quickly...
Well, it's just like a pre-sale. So a lot of it's like what Ethereum did. They did a pre-sale where you would invest and you'd get the tokens on launch. So it is doable. I don't think it's technically not doable. I'm just wondering...
My theory is, and I don't know exactly, my theory is it just got too big too fast before they could do anything like that.
It's still going now, though, right? People are still...
Yeah, so, I mean... yeah. People got to understand just how big this got, and this is where I think some of the crypto people bear some responsibility for it, because obviously... Ruja Ignatova and the OneCoin leaders were using all the hype of cryptocurrency, all the talk about it, financial revolution, banking the unbanked, They actually would often say Bitcoin, they're arrogant, I can see you're smiling, Rise, but it's not for ordinary people, and they're dismissive of ordinary people who don't get the tape, but I'm going to build a new one, it's going to be for the masses. So they used all the language of it. And they do these massive conferences, and you wouldn't find one crypto specialist there. They'd all be multi-level marketers and direct marketers, but who believed they were part of this brand new financial revolution. So they would be talking about Bitcoin prices and Ethereum prices and OneCoin prices, as if they're all part of the same family. Yeah. And it's because it went through the multi-level marketing system. I mean, within months, it had reached 175 countries. It just grew at this incredible rate. But I don't think the crypto world was fast enough at really aggressively calling it out because they just thought it was another scam, not realizing they thought, maybe you thought, maybe people like you thought, this is so obviously a scam, no one's going to fall for it.
Well, I thought it was already dead by the time I'd heard about it, and there was... I remember the last time before I listened to your podcast I'd heard about it was when I heard about the notice that was up on the government website.
The FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority. Yeah, 2016 they put it up, and they took it down again in 2017.
So I read about that maybe in 2017. I just assumed it was dead. Only until I heard your thing. I was like, oh God, there's still... Yeah. And then I wondered, has it a life of its own that they can't even stop?
Yes. And that's, I think, what also happened.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you think about the classic pyramid selling structure, you will have little nodes in the pyramid, and you've taken a look at some of the products they offer. I mean, the insane products and the returns they are promising people.
I text you as well.
Yeah. So like an ultimate package. The ultimate package, and it's 118,000 euros, and for that you'll get millions of coins, and in exchange you get millions of tokens that will mine your coins, and you'll get 2 million coins that are all each worth $30 or whatever. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But the people who are still running, who are quite high up in the pyramid, not at the very top, but let's say they all have these weird names like Diamond and Crown Diamond and Ruby and Emerald. That's how the system works, and you've got to reach a certain level. This is alien language for a crypto person, but in the multi-level marketing world, this is all very familiar. Because if you worked for Herbalife, you'd know you have all these different levels of the pyramid, and if you get $800,000 worth of sales beneath you, you become a Diamond, and you become a Crown Emerald, all these things.
Like Scientology has.
Well, yeah, levels. Yeah. So you're always you're striving to reach the next level. And to get to the next level in the pyramid, you've got to amass more sales, which means you've got to keep recruiting. So there's people in the pyramid, the head's cut off, the founder disappears. The brother is arrested, who runs it after Ruja disappears until March 2019 when he's arrested. But in the pyramid, it can keep going because you could keep selling more packages to people below you and keep pulling in the commission. You get 10% commission on the sales you make.
But where's the money centrally going to? Like, if I sell a package, is there like a
head
central
office? There's a head office still in Sofia,
it's
Bulgaria,
still running,
which is still open.
That's unbelievable.
Who's going to shut it down?
Well, you would have thought the Bulgarian authorities.
Why? They're not selling in Bulgaria.
Okay.
And they're making loads of money. And they're paying tax. Well, they're paying taxes in Bulgaria, and they have a huge office, and they employ loads of people. Mm-hmm. And they don't really recruit in Bulgaria, which I think is quite intentional. And there's other rumours that swirl around about connections with the Bulgarian authorities that I can't really go into because I haven't figured it out myself. But they keep running, and so you've got people in a village in Uganda who I went to see, who are still buying packages and saying, yeah, but the office is open still, and the people above them are still making money because they're recruiting people into the pyramid, and they're making a 10% commission that's still being paid out through the head office. But sometimes it's even darker in Uganda. So I heard stories of people let's say I've got 100 OneCoin in my account, and the market price, quote unquote, is roughly $30, and the market price is set by the head office. But they claim it's based on a really complicated algorithm that no one understands. And I could transfer you my 100 coins through the internal system, and people are turning up with bundles of cash in Uganda and giving the cash so I can send you my 100 OneCoin, and they're paying the market rate for it. So it can run even without the head office.
It's a black market.
A weird black market of sort of scammers scamming scammers and all sorts of weird things going on. That's the thing about these pyramid systems that people maybe don't always understand, is it does take on a life of its own, and it just explodes. And there's a weird incentive for people in it, even when they kind of know it's a scam, to keep recruiting because they can still make money.
So with a show like this, I'm always thinking, what's the connection to Bitcoin, and like, how can I help listeners and such? And, it is a Bitcoin only show, but I don't mind touching other things if there's a relevant story to it. One issue I always take with certain people who are Bitcoiners, and I get a lot of flack for, but I stand by, is that I think there's a massive disconnection between somebody who's into Bitcoin, who understands what a blockchain is, understand how it works, understands how consensus works, understand what censorship resistance is, and somebody who's been told, here's another cryptocurrency, it's better than Bitcoin, you should buy it because of this. I think there's a gulf in understanding of between these people and why they get sucked into this. And therefore, for me, it's important then. It's like, well, this is why it's important to educate people about, Bitcoin and how you approach it, because most people aren't going to get into all the technical side of things. And this is where I think it's useful.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an American guy who was basically more or less 2 years of who's really into Bitcoin, called Timothy Curry.
I just wrote his name down.
Yeah, Timothy Curry.
He was great.
Yeah, he's like a Bitcoin fan, loves Bitcoin. And what he saw with OneCoin is that they were using the same language as Bitcoin and saying to people, in effect, you've missed out on Bitcoin, but you haven't missed out to be part of this revolution. So maybe the price of Bitcoin's beyond you, but you've got to get in now. And in the recruitment for the OneCoin videos and stuff, they'd always tell the story of the Bitcoin pizza guy.
Yeah, 10,000.
10,000, and you
Lazarus.
Yeah, was that the name?
Lazarus.
Kind of legendary story, isn't it? And
the $100 million pizza.
Yeah, exactly. And lots of other stories of people who'd forgotten they bought 2 Bitcoin in 2012, and then they suddenly realised they could buy a flat and all that stuff. And he could see that what this was doing, because this reached millions of people. This OneCoin. I mean, they had 3.5 million members, and I reckon over 1 million investors. And he could see that what this would do in the end would be to either undermine people's confidence in the whole idea of Bitcoin, because it's just, it's another scam, and force regulators to clamp down even harder on quote-unquote legitimate cryptocurrencies, because they'd see how many people had lost their money. And so he was, from a Bitcoiner's perspective, he was trying to warn people about OneCoin because he could see the damage that it would do to Bitcoin. That was his kind of thinking. He was accused of being a hater and was sort of... and a Bitcoiner who's scared of OneCoin. You're scared of OneCoin because OneCoin's going to destroy Bitcoin. That's why you're trying to undermine it. So that was how the people tried to attack him. But there was just all these people out here that had read about Bitcoin for the first time in the newspapers, and all they'd heard was that it's this amazing new thing that's going to keep going up in value and you're going to make loads of money.
It doesn't make any sense when you first hear about it. I remember
What, Bitcoin?
Yeah, when I first heard about the Silk Road.
For most people, it doesn't.
They're like, oh, it's this magical, it's this money on the internet. I was like, what? Who invented it? It's like, well, no one really knows, but it's just, they have value, they can transfer it to each other. Look, you're going to get the odd libertarian, and Eric Voorhees is just going to click. He's going to get this. You get this.
Yeah.
For most people, it's like, yeah, but my money comes from the bank and the government are responsible for it. So they just don't get it.
No, and it's a perfect opening then for a scammer to come in and say, well, you don't understand, Bitcoin's really complicated. Well, our stuff's really complicated too. Don't worry too much about all the details of it. You know what I mean? And
here's a package.
And it's really simple. This is so easy. You don't need to understand about that. Pay some money into this account and you'll get some OneCoin into your account. Job done. I could almost cry when I think about the people, the Ugandans especially, because I spent a lot of time there, who put their money into OneCoin. And if it was as easy to put your money into Bitcoin, they would have put all their money into Bitcoin. They could have made quite a lot of money from it. It's like, oh my God, people were putting thousands and thousands of pounds into OneCoin in 2015 rather than Bitcoin because they thought we've missed the Bitcoin boat and stuff. And so...
Well, if you think about it, I mean, have you ever bought Bitcoin?
Yeah,
I mean, you know how it works, right?
Yeah.
Right. So with OneCoin, I log into a website like I log into Facebook or Twitter, and there's my OneCoin.
Yeah.
Well, with Bitcoin, you have to buy an exchange, you have to then transfer it to a wallet. A wallet can be a piece of paper, it can be a hardware wallet, it can be a software wallet. You've got to be careful which ones you have. You've got to protect your private key. You've got it's a lot more work.
It is. And I think a lot of people who didn't understand the tech really felt OneCoin was easy. And Ruja, the founder of OneCoin, was playing on the fact that Bitcoin was complicated. It was difficult, and the way that the Bitcoiners speak, you won't understand it. But this is for the mass market. This is for the decent, ordinary people. And she really played on that side of Bitcoin being complicated for an ordinary person to get people to invest. And I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that are frustrating about it. But one of the weird ones is Satoshi, him or her or themselves, disappearing, because Ruja disappears in 2017, October the 25th. She takes a flight from Sofia, Bulgaria to Athens, and no one's seen her since. And every time I would say to OneCoiners, which I'm still arguing with them today because they still believe And maybe we'll get onto the kind of, you cannot break their belief because it's more than just a coin. But like Bitcoin, it's more than a currency. It's a philosophy now for these people. I'd always say, yes, but the founder has vanished. There's an indictment, a US indictment against her. And they'd say, yeah, but where's Satoshi Nakamoto then? And I'm like, yeah, but it's different. Well, why is it different? They've both vanished. It's like, okay, but she's wanted by the authorities. What, you don't think Satoshi would be wanted by the authorities too? They'd like to find him as well, wouldn't they? And I'm like, well, yeah, I suppose maybe. But the US authorities, they're in cahoots with the banks.
Well, without understanding the nuances, you can see how they come into these conclusions.
But that's the thing, that it's not ridiculous, some of the things they say. It's like, yeah, but don't you think that the FBI is trying to protect the banking system in the US, and that's why they're scared of Bitcoin and OneCoin? And I'm like, yes, I get what you're saying, but there is a big difference between OneCoin and Bitcoin. Well, go on then, tell me, explain it to me.
But it comes down to the blockchain.
Well, yeah.
The blockchain exists, and we can send to each other. I can send you some Bitcoin now, right now, on your phone. No one can stop it. That, to me, is the primary fundamental difference. That's to me the point you can attack and say, here you go.
Yes. Okay. Yes, and I agree. And that was and you can't buy and sell OneCoin on a public exchange, which means the price is meaningless because there are currently 73 billion OneCoin have been mined with a quote-unquote price of $29.95. And they say that the exchange is going to open soon and then you'll be able to sell them all at $29. And I'm like, who's going to buy these coins at $29.95? That's not how a market works.
If they do it, there will be a market, though. That would be the really interesting thing.
Yes, but the price would plummet immediately.
But once it will find a bottom. That would be the interesting thing. But it's now.
But so the thing about OneCoin and why it spread is because there was enough bits of truth that you can cling on to, even the extent to which you can send me a Bitcoin now on my phone. Well, I can send you a OneCoin. I can
via the website.
Via the website, you've got a OneCoin thing. I've got a OneCoin account. I can send it to you. So they'll say, well, what's the difference? You send a Bitcoin, I send a OneCoin. That's the frustrating thing about a lot of these scams. You can take all the language and you can take certain bits of it and run it, and it becomes and for an ordinary person, it's really difficult. Like I tried to explain blockchain to my mum on the show, and she didn't understand what the hell I was talking about. She wouldn't know the difference between OneCoin and OneCoin and Bitcoin, and I'd probably have to work quite hard to work out a way of explaining it so she intuitively gets why they're totally different. And it wouldn't be easy.
It's definitely not easy. And again, I go back to the point. This is the point I'm often trying to get with Bitcoiners. I try and take this approach whereby, I used to be a UX designer, web designer. I started out as a UX designer. There's this book by a guy called Steve Krug called Don't Make Me Think. And the idea being, as a UX designer, whenever you use a product, every time you have to think about a decision to make, you should write that down, and then you can actually design a better product. Right? Is it intuitive with my Apple phone, before to swipe up? All these different things, are they intuitive? And I try Bitcoin. I purposely don't go too technical. I purposely don't learn about how the protocol works because I always want to stay. I always want to stay as close to the beginners as possible, so I can understand their experience. There's enough technical people out there. There's so many of them, but I try and stay as far away as possible, and that's where I can then empathize with something like OneCoin and why people buy it, or any of these other. I can empathize when somebody first hears about Bitcoin and why they buy Ethereum or why they buy fucking Dentacoin or why they buy Dash, because they can't tell the difference when they first come in. And even when they come in, for a lot of people, it can be confusing. Yeah,
very, very confusing. And I think as the Bitcoin community talks about how we're going mainstream, we're going to get bigger, we want to make sure this becomes a really big thing for people. I think there is a responsibility on them to understand the level of knowledge most people have, and that OneCoin is the kind of thing that will happen if you just sort of ignore the mass market and and the sort of the level of knowledge that most people have. The fear of missing out on the next big thing. I mean, I kind of don't think I really understood how powerful that is until I looked into OneCoin and the kind of fervor, the thrill, the excitement. And I'd even speak to a lot of people saying who've still got money now in it, who still think it's going to happen. And they'd say things like, well, loads of cryptocurrencies fail, and some of them come off. This is just a bet. I've made a bet. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't work. And it's like, well, with Bitcoin, it actually might make you money. With OneCoin, I promise you it won't make you a penny. I know that it won't.
And it was heartbreaking, dude.
Really, really hard to do.
So that's Tim Curry. When he first spoke, I actually thought it was somebody else. I won't say who, but I thought it was another person in the crypto community because he talked just like them. And the way he was talking to the Scottish guy, so I forgot her name.
Yes, Jen McAdam, a Scottish investor.
Yeah, the way he was talking to us, like it was a fucking scam. It's a fucking scam. Like he was just point blank with her. I was like, that's definite Bitcoiner language. He gets it, but he couldn't convince her. Actually, an interesting question. Why was that even recorded? I thought that was quite interesting that was recorded.
It's very interesting. Well, the first thing is that, so this is what is also interesting about pyramid schemes. Jen McAdam, the Scottish investor, who is kind of one of the key victims in our story, was also a recruiter, because once you get into the network, you're incentivized to recruit other people. So the reason he's so angry is not saying, oh, you poor victim, you've invested in OneCoin. It's like, you're still fucking recruiting people to join OneCoin. So you are a scammer. Yeah. So he was angry with her because she is still recruiting. And it took her 3 months of reading through material that he'd sent her before she started to come to the realization that OneCoin was not the next Bitcoin. The reason it's recorded, and I think this is quite an interesting reflection on media more generally, more and more people do Zoom chats and Skype chats, and they just record everything.
Right.
They just record it. It's amazing as a podcast person, because we're interviewing Jen, and she says, I mean, I do have footage of me and Tim arguing when I was a believer, and he was trying to talk me out of it, from 2 years ago.
It was an amazing bit.
No, me and the producer were like, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, I've got the footage still." And I said, "Can we please? Could we have that? Because that is incredible, incredible." And then we got her to listen back to herself defending the coin that she now hates and tries to call out. So weird. She sounds like a different person, and she's almost in tears listening to it. Like, I can't believe that was me. But I was so brainwashed. It's talked about in cult-like language. I was so believed. I'd been told that this Bitcoin person was a hater, that he was scared of OneCoin. She said I thought he was mentally unwell. I thought he just was so scared of us and our amazing revolution.
Yeah, so that was.
But it's interesting though, because wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people have this weird footage of recorded conversations they have that you can use to really understand the psychology of why people invest in stuff.
That was a very gripping part. Like that part, because I think it plays out twice or 3 times in that, and that part's like, wow, you've got that, because it was an amazing interaction. I could totally picture each of them, why they're saying what they're saying. But I found
you can play it on this if you want. Feel free to use it.
Let me explain. Can you see my video? Can you see my face?
Yes.
Okay, good. When you and I got into cryptocurrency, we had a very similar experience. And that experience was that cryptocurrency can bank the unbanked. It can provide banking for 2.5 billion people on this earth that do not have the means to be banked. Okay? Cryptocurrency can do that. I promise you this much. Because all you need is a cell phone. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, OneCoin is a company that prints its own money. There's no government in the world that is going to allow ever a company to print their own money. OneCoin is not licensed anywhere in the entire world as a money services business. In order to print money, you have to be a money services business. You have to have what's called an MTL, which is a money transmitter's license. And the reason that cryptocurrency in general can accomplish that is because it's decentralized. It's not a company. There is no CEO. There is no employees of any cryptocurrency in the world other than OneCoin.
Right.
Okay.
I'd like just I want to add to that. So you're saying decentralized. I get that. And guess what? That's why I didn't invest my money in Bitcoin. I didn't like the idea of that at all. Because,
Okay.
no, let me finish. This was
I'm going to listen to you. I promise. I promise. I thank you for giving me the opportunity for us to have a face-to-face. I will listen to whatever you say. Thank you.
So I chose not to go with a decentralized Bitcoin. I didn't want to do that because I read so many stories, how it can be hacked, how it has been hacked.
It's never been hacked. That's a lie.
Oh, that's a lie.
I can prove it to you. I can prove it to you. I can prove it to you.
Oh, it's all over the internet, but that's a lie.
No, let's think about it. Bitcoin has never been hacked, period. What has been hacked is there's been bank robberies, which means that exchanges have been hacked. Okay, so exchanges are virtual banks that hold digital currency. Those virtual banks that have been hacked, such as Mt. Gox, such as Bitfinex, and things like this, did not have the proper security measures to hold private keys. OneCoin does not even allow you to hold your private key. One Bitcoin as a protocol has never been hacked. It uses something called SHA-256.
Yeah.
The SHA-256 algorithm has never, ever been hacked. I'm looking for a paper wallet. In Bitcoin, there is a 35 hexadecimal, I guess it would be, character for your public key, and there's a 64 hexadecimal character for your private key. Your private key is made up of both numbers and letters from A to Z, lowercase and uppercase, plus the numbers 1 through 10. 64 bits, 64 measures long. A private key is more unique than a single grain of sand in this entire earth if that grain of sand in this entire earth was 7 whole worlds, and each of those worlds was a grain of sand. It is an astronomical number. It is debatable whether even quantum computing could hack a SHA-256 algorithm. Bitcoin has never, ever, ever been hacked. Exchanges have been hacked.
That's not what my research told me on the internet. And I believe you me, I did vigorous researches, as probably you have, as you said.
Look. I will send you $100 in Bitcoin. I swear to God.
This was my choice.
Prove me wrong. I'll send you $100 in Bitcoin. I swear to God.
I chose to go with a centralized cryptocurrency, whether you don't believe that or not. I chose to go with that because I felt secure where my money was going.
You're foolish. I'm sorry. Do you know that Ruja Ignatova is a convicted criminal? She's a convicted criminal.
Do you realise the messages that you have sent me have been abusive, harassing?
I'm trying to help you.
You're not helping me whatsoever. You're upsetting me. I'm a single parent. I have a son of 28. I have 2 little
And you've
kids.
invested $10,000 in this.
And I'm happy
and you're going to lose it.
And I'm happy with that. I made a decision. Like if I put my money into shares, any investment, if I chose to buy gold, that
you have no chance in winning. This is a scam. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have no chance.
I do not believe it is 100% in my heart. I do not believe it is a scam.
I understand that. That's why we're talking.
Right. And you have to understand that this is my choice.
It is.
Becoming abusive or harassing or all this that you've wrote to me. I mean, the things that you've wrote to me.
If I see a woman getting her purse robbed, if I see a woman getting her purse robbed on the side of the street, I'm going to tackle the guy that's robbing her purse. Okay?
I'm the most, I tell you, I've got a caring heart. I care for everybody. Everybody, not just my family. I care.
You've been deceived. You've been deceived by professional criminals, by professional con artists. You've been deceived. I will
believe that. What you have to understand, Tim, is you have your opinion, and I have mine.
It's not an opinion. It's a fact. I can prove it.
No, see when you say it's a fact. See, when I read your Bitcoin file last night that you sent me, and you made a fact and gave a specific number of suicides that will happen over that.
There's going to be over a dozen suicides that happen over this. I promise you. I swear to God, I'll bet $1,000 on it. I will bet you $1,000.
That is absolutely shocking that you can do that. I mean, for me,
this is the biggest scam in the world right now. Do you understand? It's the biggest scam in the fucking world.
Anything you have to say that discredited, that was it for me. I couldn't read anymore.
Let's talk about facts. Was Ruja Ignatova convicted on 24 counts of fraud, or was she not? Let's start there.
I haven't read that. But what
I can tell you.
What I can tell you is everybody in life has a hard time. Everybody in life, if they're an entrepreneur, can go bankrupt.
Do you know how many scams she's been involved in? Do you know that Bitcoin? Have you ever heard of Bitcoin? She was the treasurer for Bitcoin. Guess what? That cost investors $50 million. $50 million. This is way bigger than that. $1 billion.
All the rest of the entrepreneurs are big guys that's tried something in life and it hasn't worked. What, you going to knock them for that?
Listen, she's a fucking scammer. She's a fraud. She was not Businesswoman of the Year in 2 years in Bulgaria. The title doesn't exist. She hired a PR company led by a gentleman named, a person by the name of Yevgeny Minchev, who specializes in making, listen, I'm telling you the truth. You can find everything I said.
What I'm going to say to you right now is, in the business world, I was a businesswoman. I had my business and I lost it.
Do you know that Financial IT Magazine does not have her issue on there anymore? Do you know that? I have a copy of it.
I didn't know that. But I do know that Chris Principe had a lot to say very good about Dr. Ruja. So you know what?
She's not a doctor. She does not have a PhD. It's a fucking lie. She does not have a PhD. They claim that she has a PhD from Oxford, okay, in law. Oxford does not offer a PhD class. There is no PhDs that come out of Oxford.
Okay.
Look it up.
I looked it up.
Yeah.
I looked it up. But
She's not a PhD.
It seems that your Bitcoin file, what I read, was, do you know what? Where's your proof in the pudding, so to speak? Because there was a few links on that you highlighted in blue, and I clicked it, and it didn't go anywhere.
Wait. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. Please repeat that.
The Bitcoin file that you sent me to read. And you're saying this and that, and click here, and I clicked it, and it didn't take me anywhere for proof. So to me, that told me, well, where how's this link? Why is it not taking me to where he said this information is? He's discrediting OneCoin. He's discrediting Dr. Ruja, and he's saying this is the information. And yet, when I click on it, numerous times, it took me.
You're looking at me in the eye, okay? We're having a conversation right now. Tell me what you need. I promise that anything that I can claim, that I have claimed, I can back up with facts. Listen, the article that I wrote for Bitcoin.com was the first article I've ever published in my entire life. I'm not a blogger. I don't get paid to write shit, okay?
What do you do this for? Why do you do this? Because you say you're wanting to protect people and all the rest of it, but you're actually hurting.
No. That's the number 3. There's 3 reasons that I'm doing this.
All right.
The third reason is to protect people. I'm not entirely altruistic, okay? The first reason is because this shit is going to make a bad impression on all of cryptocurrency, regulators are going to say, oh, OneCoin was $1 billion scam. OneCoin was similar to Bitcoin. OneCoin is not a cryptocurrency. There is no blockchain, and I can prove it to you, by the way.
Yes, there's a blockchain, Tim.
How?
Tim.
I can prove it to you that there's not.
All right, okay. Well, then prove it to me.
Okay, so I will. I'll do it right now.
Right.
Are you ready?
Right now, and I'll see it when I come back from my baby shower, because you know what? You prove it to me, because every link that I pressed on that file that you sent me, that
I'll fucking prove it. Listen, I'm telling you, prove anything I've said, ever, anything. Prove any of it wrong, and I give you $100. I swear to God.
Stop harassing
Set up a Bitcoin wallet, prove it wrong, I'll save you $100.
You need to stop harassing people, and you need to stop upsetting people, because this is...
No, I'm not going to do that, because you people are scamming people out of money, and this company is going to crash. It's going to collapse.
And obnoxious. I have never met anybody like a person.
I don't give a shit, okay? It's a fucking scam. It's a fucking scam.
The way that you're speaking, it's disgusting, and and people have to take you serious. Oh, come on.
Look, guess what? We'll both know the truth very soon.
Goodbye.
Next up, I talked to Jamie more about the OneCoin scam, but before that, I do have a message from my super amazing sponsors. Okay, so first up, we have Consensus. Consensus is back. Have you been before? Have you been out to New York? Consensus does a great job in getting everyone in the crypto community into the city for a couple of days, for the events, for the hanging out, for the drinking, for the parties. It's always great to catch up with everyone, find out what's been happening, make new friends as well. And they always manage to bag great speakers. You know, last year they had presidential candidate Andrew Yang. They've had SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce, and they've also had the CEO and co-founder of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong. It's a massive list. It's a massive list over the previous years. I will be going to Consensus again next year, and they've also got a special offer to the listeners of this show. So if you also want to go, the prices of the tickets will never be lower than the $999 you can get them for now. And this offer expires on the 13th of December at midnight. So if you want to get a ticket now at the low price of $999, just use the code WhatBitcoinDid before December the 13th. Okay, you can do that at consensus2020.com, which is consensus2020.com, and I hope to see you all in New York next year. Also, Wire, my new sponsor. I can't call them new anymore. They've been sponsored for over a month now, but have you checked them out yet? It's my buddy Michael Dunworth. He's absolutely crushing it. Also, they are working with Dropbit and helping delivering the onboarding. So, Wire, why should you check them out? They've been helping companies onboard people into Bitcoin for years now, I think since 2013. So it doesn't matter whether you are a solo developer or you're just a large team. If you want to simplify user onboarding, if you want to offer your users a fast and easy way to purchase Bitcoin, then you got to talk to Wire. They've been doing it, as I said, since 2013. They crush it. They take care of all the heavy lifting in terms of compliance, payments, and liquidity, so you can ignore all that bullshit and concentrate on focusing on your core offering. If you've got an idea for the next killer app, do not let the regulators kill it. Find out more by reaching out to Wire or creating a developer account at sendwire.com, which is SENDWYRE.com. Lastly, but no means least, we have the best mobile Bitcoin wallet in the world. It's Dropbit. Love these guys. Going to be heading out to Ohio tomorrow. Going to be catching up with them, finding out what is coming next. They have absolutely smashed it this year. So many cool things. They started out telling me, yeah, we're the Venmo of Bitcoin, because you could text Bitcoin to people. Then they added the ability to tweet Bitcoin to people, which I do almost on a daily basis. They've now added Batch32 address support. They've added Lightning support, and they've now offered a way for you to buy Bitcoin directly in the app. They are smashing it. And if you haven't got access to Lightning yet, do reach out to me on Twitter. Everyone who reaches out to me, I hook you up. I'll send you 25,000 sats. I will unlock your Lightning wallet. I got you covered here. But you do want to check it out if you haven't downloaded Dropbit yet. It's available for the iPhone and Android. Just head over to dropbit.app, which is dropbit.app. I actually found her story heartbreaking. There are two really heartbreaking moments, that and the Ugandans. hers in some ways is more heartbreaking because the Ugandans, it's almost like they used to be a scam. They're all like giggling about it, saying, "Yeah, but we're
so weird." Yeah, that was so weird with the Ugandans, like that feeling that, like, another scam, scam that another multi-level marketing promise that didn't come off.
Yeah,
and sort of like God wills. It's got. I was so surprised in Uganda that people weren't as annoyed as Jen McAdam. They weren't as upset and as annoyed and scared and embarrassed.
Well, that's the difference. I think with her, there's the social aspect to her friendship groups and her family that she'd brought them into this. Like, how fucking embarrassing.
You know what's weird though? I found that to be a real revelation about these pyramid schemes. People are so embarrassed to talk about it because they have recruited other people into these scams, and they have made even money from recruiting them in. And then their friends and family have lost their money, and it like destroys relationships. But at the same time, I've given the odd bit of crypto. Like, these people come to me and say, "Oh, it's cryptocurrency," and I read your book and saw about Bitcoin and I bought it, but it's gone down in value loads. And I'm like, shit.
Yeah,
I didn't advise you, but it's like you feel somehow responsible as well. Because, to be honest, for ordinary people, whether you've invested in OneCoin or you put loads of money into a cryptocurrency that you thought was legit and then collapsed, feels the same, doesn't it? I mean, you've lost your money. What's the difference?
Yeah, well, so interestingly, when I first got in, like late 2016, early 2017, the prices were going up. And so I did a Facebook group for my friends just to talk to them so we could talk about it. And I just started writing, and then I was writing more and then writing blog posts before I did the podcast. And, in some ways, I was actively promoting cryptocurrency, not just Bitcoin. Like, I believed in it all. And I thought this was a technical revolution. And I've got no doubt that some people will have invested because of my period in that time and maybe have lost money.
Yeah.
I can't undo that. I've deleted all the posts, right? I don't talk about that anymore. I'm very focused on Bitcoin. If someone asks me whether they should buy now, I have a very different message. It's like, look, you should look at it, be very careful, have a long time scale. This is what I do, but be very, very careful.
Yeah.
And I'm reluctant to give any advice, but I can see how people got sucked into it.
Yeah.
Because of the incentives.
Yeah, exactly. And
I mean, I felt sorry for her when she was crying.
Yeah, because the thing is, she'd invested her dad's. The thing with her was that she'd invested her dad's inheritance, and it's almost the weird thing about that program is that everyone was almost from central casting. Like, all the characters that we met were just these almost caricatured versions of people that you expect in a story like this. Like, Jen's dad was like a miner who'd saved up his whole life, like working down the mines. She inherited, after he died and she'd looked after him, inherited his money, and she put it all into OneCoin. So it was even more, it wasn't just I've lost money, it was like my hardworking dad. And she kept coming back to this distinction. My dad would spend his life, and he wouldn't waste one penny. And if he was alive, he'd say, don't even think about putting it into something like this. Like, I worked 30 years to make that money. And we'd shared stories because my dad's the same. My dad cycles around car parks looking for buy one, get one free parking tickets for McDonald's to say, you know what I mean? Like, who doesn't believe anything that sounds too good to be true, he'll work hard to save his money. And the sort of the difference, the comparison between that mindset and I've just blown it all on a cryptocurrency, I think really eats her up inside. And there's something wider there, which is, and I said to her, why did you think you could make 1,000%? What sort of society are we living in where that seems reasonable to you, that you're obviously going to just keep making loads of money by doing nothing more than putting some money into your OneCoin account? And there is something, and I say this at the end of the show, it's like, OneCoin is possible, and people believed incredible returns on their investment because it was happening. People were making millions investing in Bitcoin. So why is it? It doesn't sound ludicrous, but to her dad, it would have sounded insane, and he never would have put his money. So I think it was the fact that she felt greedy, she felt selfish, as well as being ashamed to have recruited other people in.
Do you know how she is now? Is she okay?
I speak to her all the time still.
Yeah.
You know, one of the weird things, I don't say this in the podcast, but one of the weird things about it is one of the joys about being involved in maybe all cryptocurrencies, and probably especially Bitcoin, is feeling like you're part of a community of people that are all in the same, you've got the shared language, you've got this vision, this ideal. She is now part of an anti-OneCoin community.
Okay.
That gives her the same feeling. The same feeling. Like she's part of a group. We're fighting against these scammers. She now believes in Bitcoin, and she's read up on it, and she's really into it. But she now has like a mission and purpose in life, which is she's made loads of amazing friends who've never met. Tim Curry and Jen McAdam, the two, they've never met, but they're like best friends. I dream one day to be able to get them together. And that's the amazing thing about the internet. You create these communities online of people who you feel so close to. And she spends all day in these OneCoin support groups, thousands of people in them. I sometimes wonder whether she wouldn't change it. She's found a purpose, a group, a mission. She's found friends. She's helped loads of people. Yeah. I wonder, I never really asked her that, but I wonder whether fighting the scams has given her this whole, like...
So it's very interesting because it makes me think of two things. Firstly, it actually makes me think of Brittany Kaiser, we obviously talked about previously, in that she's gone from working from in Cambridge Analytica to fighting for privacy rights. So that makes me think of her, and I think you can go through something and it makes you, it's like the poacher turned gamekeeper kind of situation.
It's addictive.
Yeah.
Well. It becomes addictive, like fighting OneCoin becomes an addiction.
Well, it also makes me think of somebody else. It makes me think of Lynn Ulbrich, and I'll tell you why. She would change the past if she could, but on the back of campaigning for Ross and trying to have Ross released, she has a bigger mission now. She's actually looking much more broadly at the US prison system, that there are non-violent prisoners who are serving long sentences, like people for selling marijuana who are having 25-year sentences that haven't been commuted yet. She is now fighting to try and change the injustices in the US correctional system. Now, if you turn around to Lynn and said to her, could you change it? Yes, she would, of course, because she wants her son out of prison. But if you turn around to her and said, if Ross is released, would you stop this? I don't think she would.
No.
Because she has found a mission because of this.
I'm sure that's right, I can well imagine it. And sometimes I even think that they wouldn't want, in a weird way, they wouldn't want Ruja to be found. Because that keeps, it keeps your purpose. She's still out there. We need to find her. There's more. I don't know how to put it, but there is a bigger purpose in trying. But I mean, the sad news, of course, is that OneCoin dies and another very similar multi-level marketing fake cryptocurrency scam emerges. There's lots of them out there, which I probably can't name for legal reasons, but they're never going to be short of mission and purpose. The people that now fight OneCoin. One of the really interesting things, though. It's probably so strange. One of the best interviews I did through that was with a woman who knew nothing about OneCoin, called Eileen Barker. She was originally at London School of Economics. Who specialised in psychology. Yes, who specialised in cults.
Okay, so this to me, again, I always tend to focus on things. This to me was the most important part of the whole 8-part, and the reason this interview is most relevant to this interview we're doing, because the cults exist in cryptocurrency. You've got the Ripple cult, you've got the Ethereum cult, and what tends to happen is you can see the way they work, and it's because they hold what we call them bag holders. They hold a bag. But I think, to be fair, you have to say it exists with Bitcoin as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the weird thing with her interview, and again, so I'm sort of taking my lead from you in terms of how relevant it is to the wider community, because I don't know that anywhere near as well.
Well, the reason it's relevant is because of objectivity.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes Bitcoiners, like, I piss a lot of them off because I say things that annoy them, and sometimes I get things wrong and I say stupid things, but sometimes I believe I'm right. And I think because this cult-like behavior exists, they lose objectivity.
Yeah, and you it's weird, and you can only see it when you leave. That's what a lot of cult members say. Like So this is what Eileen Barker. So I think her PhD was in the Moonies, studying the Moonies, or it was either the Moonies or Scientologists, or one of those sorts of groups. And she took a little look at OneCoin for us, but she just delivered all these amazing insights that were better than anyone that understood OneCoin fully. We'd say, but what about the fact that Dr. Ruja's disappeared? Surely that means the believers will stop believing. And she was like, no, the opposite. She's taken a sacrifice. She's had to go into hiding for you. because she has your money, she's looking after your best interests. And then I'd interview people who still believed in OneCoin, and there's like they're parroting the same lines, that she's gone into a safer zone for the revolution. And I'm like, she knew that through studying millenarial cults and stuff like that. And it was so interesting to see her insights. It had nothing to do with cryptocurrencies, really, but the way that people who invest heavily in something, put all their money and their hopes into it, it's very hard for them to leave because they have to accept that all that was a waste, that they'd been duped, that they'd been tricked, and they tricked other people. And psychologically, we don't really want to ever do that. So you just double down on your belief, harder and harder and harder, and get deeper and deeper and deeper. And you come to believe that people that are being legitimate critics hate you and want to destroy you and do you down. And you create a small group of, the OneCoin had these little WhatsApp groups, and they would say, don't listen to Bitcoiners. Don't listen to Google. They're all the haters. They don't want us to succeed. And if we stick together, we'll overcome this. And you see that everywhere. In every political movement, you see parts of it. One of the things she said that was interesting that we didn't include was that anti-cult groups can sometimes take on a cult-like behavior as well. They become obsessed with taking the cult down. And they exhibit the same like closed mind, like certainties as the people that they're bringing down as well. I'm not accusing my OneCoin critics of that, by the way, but it's true that the OneCoin critics have become very obsessed about taking it down and are like so into it. And I think that's perfectly legitimate on their behalf. But you do sometimes see as well the critics of certain movements take on the same weird behaviours as the people they're criticising, because they they create a small group who share the same language and all the rest of it. And it's quite exciting to be part of that.
Well, I think the biggest lie told in cryptocurrency is that like people not accepting the majority of people are in this for a financial return. Not everyone. And people have different... It's a bit like, our other interview, which I'll link people to about Silicon Valley, is that, all the Silicon Valley companies tell of this social impact, but really it's about making money. Facebook's about connecting us. No, it's about making billions in advertising. This is similar. So whether or not you're talking about taking money, separating money and state, or whether it's Ethereum people talking about democratizing finance and decentralizing finance, in the end, they still care because they own some of it and they get to make a financial return. Now, I must be very specific and say it's not everyone.
Yes.
But the majority of people are. And this is where they come to repeat things, because I've seen it with myself. As you know, I'm being sued by Craig Wright. They repeat his messages. They call me McDruggy or McClown because he calls me McDruggy or McClown because I have a history of being a drug addict. Not 5 years clean, doesn't matter. You're a druggie. Or they talk about failed marriage, or they talk about me losing all my money for my children. And the other one they say is that I'm only doing this because I hate him. It's no. The truth is, the reason I challenged him is because I believe he's a liar, and that he's saying. But they just repeat these messages, and it doesn't matter how many times you defend them, even if you produce factual evidence that they're wrong, they don't care.
Yeah, and that's yeah. That's and again, that's one of those things that is much wider than any cryptocurrency. Yep. It's just about how groups of people that are invested, that spend a lot of time together, come to naturally create this bubble around themselves. And and especially when you've put your money in and your time in and you've done it to your friends, you almost can't admit to yourself where you are. It's too difficult. And I felt that when I was speaking to people, interviewing people that are still recruiting and promoting.
I can't believe it.
I know, and
the guy you had the call with. Was that in the final episode?
It was in the penultimate episode.
That was a weird
And
call.
he said, you're the one that's going to be in trouble, Jamie, when we go to Ofcom. And, did you not ever think that why has the FCA not shut down OneCoin yet? Which is part of the problem when the authorities do nothing.
Yeah.
Scammers use that as proof that everything's okay. But this question of almost using the cover of being part of a financial revolution to excuse more base money-making efforts, which is partly it, isn't it? And it's some of it's about the revolution, some of it's about making money. And when you put the two things together, it's kind of, they're mixed in and you can't tell one from the other. And some people are in it for one, but use the language of the other. Some people are very honest, I'm in it for the cash. Some people are in it for the cash, but say, no, this is all about the, financial revolution. And some people are just in it for the financial revolution and have accidentally made a bomb. Doing it, there's that too.
The original cypherpunks or people who got it.
They don't really care about the money. They're like, shit, I've got loads of money suddenly. So OneCoin kind of did the same. Because they would say, we're not selling you coins, we are selling you educational packages because this is about financial revolution. And with our education packages, you will get some free coins that will always go up in value and that you'll be able to sell one day. But that was like not really what it was about. It was about the education and the financial revolution. So in the public presentations they'd always talk about education. But then in the private seminars, they'd be much more likely to say, it's going to keep going up in value. You're going to make loads of money. And no one really cared about the financial revolution. So even down to that bit, OneCoin mirrors the experience of some of the Bitcoin investors.
Do you believe you ever got close to her? Or were even in the same room as her?
In the spoiler alert here, but in the episode 7, we make a prediction about where we think she is. And it's very hard to find someone that's been on the run for 2 years who's gone with at least $500 million. I mean, they're not easy people to find. And to be honest, there was 2 of us working on it, me and the producer. And at the start, I'll be perfectly honest with you, we thought we'd get nowhere near to her at all. But we thought a missing woman thread through this story will be exciting for the listeners who will then, that will take a listener all the way through understanding blockchain, multi-level marketing, how authority is created. Like the thing about fake Forbes covers. And she would speak at The Economist magazine, had done a big summit in Bulgaria and she spoke at it and they obviously didn't check her out properly. But then she uses that in her marketing, and so people can create fake authority very easily today. And so we wanted to tell all of those bits of the story, and the sort of vehicle for that would be us trying to find her. So we never, because on the face of it, a podcast about a cryptocurrency scam is pretty boring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we never thought we'd get anywhere near her, but I actually think in the end we actually did get quite near to her. She's not in one place. We say, spoiler alert, she either is in or has recently been in Frankfurt, Germany. But that is probably one of several places she's been. There's a possibility still that she's dead. I mean, that is possible. Couldn't rule it out. So one of several places. But we actually think we might have been right about that. And we might have been in an event where she was at, but with plastic surgery and stuff. So, which we never thought we'd get close. And I think we raised expectations too much, to be honest, because then everyone's like, what, you didn't find her? Fuck's sake, guys. I was like, Jesus, you know how difficult it actually is to find somebody.
Do you believe she was the head of it all? Or do you believe she was a spokesperson for it?
Another thing where rumours circulate about who's really in charge here. Now, my personal opinion, so don't take this as the official line, because I don't even know whether me and the producer agree on this entirely. My personal view is she was the person who came up with the idea along with a multi-level marketing professional called Sebastian Greenwood. There was no one else really behind it. She saw, and she says this in some FBI documents, which have intercepted emails, where she says, I am genius at working in the grey area, like where regulations aren't clear, it's not obvious what's allowed and what's not. I'm really good at operating in that grey zone. Cryptocurrencies are in that grey zone. So I'm going to be really good at selling this. So she does that. Then, as I said before, it grows so much faster than she thought. And suddenly they're sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars. And then what happens when you've got hundreds of millions of dollars that you need to start moving around and you're based in Bulgaria? Who do you need to start working with?
Yeah, the bad dudes.
Well, it gets, suddenly you're like, you draw attention to yourself, you need security, you need to move money around, and you get into shadier and shadier corners. So that's all I can say about that, really. But that's what I think might have happened.
You talk about 4 billion, but actually at one point they discussed almost 15 billion going in.
Yeah, it's very hard to fully work out the size of this scam. We were leaked internal financial documents. Yeah, I couldn't
believe the day you
it.
got that, you must have been like, wow. Fuck.
Yeah, and it says, and we worked it out, and between August 2014 and March 2017, over 4 billion euros is invested from all over the world. And we're like, 4 billion euros? Cannot believe this. But that was only up to March 2017. And we don't know if they were full records of all the things that was going on, because the country hit hardest by this was China.
Okay.
It was China. We didn't talk about that
No.
all that much.
No, you didn't.
China probably accounted for about half of that.
Wow.
But you cannot get anything out of China. I mean, we couldn't wander into China and start talking to people in the same way we could elsewhere. So it's very hard to cover that side. There is a whole nother story about what happened with OneCoin in China. Whole nother story.
Wow.
So other people we spoke to then had heard estimates that were actually significantly bigger than that.
Yeah.
Up to 15 billion.
Unfucking believable.
Yeah, I thought that, right? And there was times when I saw that and I thought, that's just not possible. The numbers must be wrong. But then you go into a small, you speak to Jen and she's like, just me and my small group of people, we've invested 250,000. And I'm like, oh, right. And then I go to Uganda and I'm in a little village with 3 or 4 people and they're like, we've all invested 5,000 and we all know 10 other people. And I'm like, shit, it is that big. It really is that big. But this multi-level marketing, direct marketing world, this is why the crypto community didn't really hear about this. Because it's enormous. People selling vitamin tablets to each other and all that stuff. It's massive. And it's often in parts of the world where there aren't many opportunities to make money in another way. So this is a kind of an opportunity to make something of yourself. But it's ignored by everyone.
Well, that's what takes me to probably who was the most interesting character in the whole thing. You know I'm going to tell you about.
Iger Alberts?
The Dutch guy.
Yeah, that's him.
God, that guy. I mean, that was where I was thinking, I just want to be there and like see this guy.
Have you seen a picture of him?
No.
Can I just show you?
Yeah, give me a picture of him. But I tell you what, also part of that, did you listen to, Serial?
I'm vaguely familiar with the most successful podcast of all time.
Did you listen to Shit Town?
I certainly did.
Do you remember the bit with the guy who's been shot in the head, who's in the background, who's always yelling out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
His wife or girlfriend reminded me of that guy. The way she just was in the background, kind of yelling and finishing sentences.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. Oh, God. I mean, go back to what I said about central casting. I mean, so he's someone that is one of the world's top multi-level marketers. He's made over $100 million, he says.
Yeah.
You can never be you can't check these things out easily. But this was what OneCoin did. They create this fake coin, and then they think, let's go and recruit all the best network marketers in the world, some of whom have teams below them of thousands of people, and tell them to stop selling vitamin tablets and start selling this fake cryptocurrency, OneCoin. And that's what they do. And they start he was making over $1 million a month in commission, getting his commission from the downline, they call it. This language is so weird, isn't it? Crown Diamond, downlines, uplines, 10% commissions, education packages. Have you ever heard any of that in a cryptocurrency conference?
No, it felt like a shadow world, actually, to be honest.
Yeah. That's how I felt about it. But this is him. Just
wow. So I'm just looking at a picture of him in his pink suit and his girlfriend in his pink suit and his pink shoes. He looks larger than life. Yeah. I'll have to put that up on the up on the page.
Yeah, you can,
wow.
These are motivational speakers.
Yeah.
That's what they are. Their job is to get on the stage. He says, I know nothing about cryptocurrency, no clue. And yet he has sold hundreds of thousands of people, maybe, or maybe tens of thousands, I'm not sure, have bought into what they thought was cryptocurrency because of him promoting it.
They rely on gullible people who want to get rich. They believe in a story that they can do this. And I mean,
think about it from the perspective of an investor, though. You think she's appeared on the cover of Forbes magazine.
Yeah.
She was actually on the cover of the Bulgarian edition of Forbes magazine on a sponsored post that looks exactly the same as the real cover. And in Bulgarian, it says this is a sponsored post. Do you speak Bulgarian? I mean, how many people investing? So that goes in all the marketing material. Then she's on The Economist. She'd spoken at an Economist conference, and they share that in the marketing material. She does have a degree from Oxford. I checked it out.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gullible people, but I mean, it's understandable why you'd invest. Because you think, and they're very rich. So the people at the top, like Iger Alberts, are making a lot of money through commissions. So they're saying, look, I've got a Maserati, I've got an Aston Martin, I've got a Ferrari, I've got a big house, and I've got it all through OneCoin. So people are like, oh, Well, how's that different from the pizza guy?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same story.
The one thing I don't understand, and this is where I'm probably being naive, but I don't understand how someone can actually do this to other people. So whilst the story of Jen McAdam,
McAdam,
whilst that was heartbreaking because of her cry, and the Ugandan one was kind of funny because they were like laughing about themselves. At the same time, the Ugandan thing was heartbreaking because these people are just so constantly abused and constantly being scammed. And when you were hearing about people, it was $25. I couldn't even get that together, thinking that's what we spend on a round down the pub, right? Thinking about that, and they're getting scammed for that. I actually don't understand how the person at the top can live with themselves and do this. I can't quantify that level of scamming that people do to people.
So the thing with something like OneCoin is, this is what I think might have happened partly. If you don't ask too many questions and you don't investigate too much, you can hide the truth from yourself about it so you don't feel too guilty. Like a lot of the people that recruited their friends and family really did believe in it. So the thing about the way it spread is that Jen recruited her friends in not to scam them, but she thought she was telling them about the next Bitcoin.
Yep.
So she was like, I don't want my friends to miss out. So it's not like they're doing something bad. They think they're helping. The way I think about it is no one's completely innocent in a pyramid because they have been victimized, they've lost their money, but they've also recruited other people in as well. So blame is quite hard to apportion clearly. But the higher up you go in the pyramid, presumably the more responsibility you have to check what you're selling, right? Because for obvious reasons. And I think a lot of people at the top maybe started out believing, asked some questions, started to get worried, and then didn't want to look into it too much because if they did, they knew they'd have to stop and they'd stop making the money. But they'd have to admit to themselves that they're now knowingly scamming people. So I wonder whether it's a sort of a crime of omission rather than commission for some of them, like refusing to look too deeply into things.
I don't know, man.
And you cover it by saying, but I believed.
Yeah, exactly.
But I believed.
Yeah.
So you can't blame me because I also believed. I'm also a victim. I've got 10 million OneCoin, which is what Iger Albert said.
Well, I mean, look, if I stopped believing in Bitcoin, my exit from that would be very difficult to explain. Like, I do believe in Bitcoin, but just say I didn't. Trying to imagine, right, okay, I have to detach myself from my show, my investments, I have to
It'd be hard, wouldn't it?
yeah, hard work.
It'd be very hard.
But then it's like anything, it's almost changing your political beliefs. It's very hard.
Yeah.
But it's kind of also weird because, I always think in these situations where you're trapped by a line of situation, and I look at someone like Lance Armstrong, it almost is like the truth set him free, and sometimes the truth does set them free, and perhaps that's what happened for Jen, and other people don't really realise that because you have that inertia to do it.
I think that's exactly right. I think that's why the series, the last episode was out exactly a week ago.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there that are going to be really pissed off with me for writing about this because I've said, all that money you thought you had and you were happy thinking you had it,
Fucking worthless.
It's not worth anything.
Yeah.
And it's some conversations I had with the investors, it was almost as if they knew it was gone, but their life is better to believe it's still there.
Yeah.
Because they think they're rich, so they're walking around being in a good mood about it. And why change that?
They'll blame you.
They'll blame me for a while.
Yeah. It'll be your fault.
It'll be my fault, yeah. And I've had a lot of that online already. Why are you trying to destroy the lives of 3 million people, saying to me, not blaming Ruja for blaming the lives of blaming me for ruining the lives. And there's probably a bit of truth in that. Like saying that it's a scam does kind of mess you up. But what happened with Jen is she said it took months to get over that, to accept it, to let it go, and then to be set free by it, and then comes out all guns blazing, trying to take it down. You often find people that are trapped in it. Yeah, they're trapped in it. Once they got out and got over that, they turn all that belief that they had against their own former love. So I think there might be a lot of people out there that are probably suffering and struggling with it, but hopefully will realise at some point, this was my hope for the project, they'd also say, I'm not the only one that was gullible. I'm not the only one that's embarrassed. A lot of us, millions of people might have made this mistake. So that gives me strength to be honest about it.
So where does the story go now? What's next?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it's only just finished, and
I know
it's in real. What a lot of it was in real time. Like we were making them as they were coming out. Like we'd be finishing on the night before it was published.
That's really brave, by the way.
It was it was stressful because we were working a lot of late nights, because sometimes with podcasts people make them all, like make the whole 8 episodes and then release them one a week, but they're all done. We made like 3 of them, and then we knew we'd be getting comeback from OneCoin, because, by the way, I suppose I could say, or you could say, that they deny all the allegations that we made. They say we're a legitimate company and we have a real blockchain. So we were including all of those responses they gave to us in the podcast. We knew we'd be getting leads from people. We knew we'd be getting victims coming forward. So we left a couple of episodes basically open. So week 1, we released 1 and 2, but we know in 6 weeks' time we don't have a podcast. We just got to hope things start coming in. So it was a bit risky, but we felt like it would be an interesting way of trying to do, like, as the story unfolds, we need to be agile with it. But it was pretty scary.
Yeah.
But what that has meant, that the last episode, there's a bit of a cliffhanger.
There's a massive cliffhanger. Come on. Like, I was like, what?
And it's a cliffhanger for us too. We don't know. We got that information in 5 days before the podcast went out. So we're still dealing with it. We're still working. I'm speaking to the producer every day, even now, figuring out what we're going to do next. Well, so people might think we've got a series 2 lined up. We haven't. We're deciding what we're going to do.
I mean, it's clearly not over, and it's clearly not over for you personally. I can tell. There's still something there.
There's an obsession about it.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where it goes. And you know what I will do? I mean, I'm going to share it out and get as many people to listen to it as possible. I think it is. I think it is fascinating. I do think Bitcoiners can learn a lot from it.
Oh, that's cool. What do you think, though? Because I've been wondering myself. Because I've been thinking, the crypto people, are they going to find this silly, like? One thing I had worried about was that Bitcoiners might think you're undermining Bitcoin talking about this scam.
No.
You're
There'll be a range of opinions. Some people will be just like, well, it's so obviously a scam, you're a fucking moron if you fell for it, which those are the people I just can't even bother to talk to. There'll be people who just find it interesting as a story. There'll be other people who will dismiss you, like, well, he's not an expert. Listen to him talk about blockchain and Bitcoin. It's like... And they're the ones, that's why I sent that tweet yesterday, because they're the ones who missed the point that actually you've made it accessible. You've actually made the information accessible. Most of all, the most important thing about this, or I'll come back to that, the most important thing about this is there's going to be hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people who will listen to this, who are what was known as a no-coiner. They haven't bought anything.
No-coiner, yeah.
They're going to go in, if they decide to buy Bitcoin or anything else, at least they're armed with some knowledge that scams exist. So it's obviously positive. I think...
But what can an existing Bitcoiner learn from this?
Well, the most important thing I think of Bitcoin, as I said earlier, is trying to understand the gulf in their understanding of Bitcoin and other people's understanding of cryptocurrency. And I have to say cryptocurrency, because anyone coming in is very... I did a show recently with this guy called Hotep Jesus, which got... a bunch of people didn't like it. But the point being, the title of the show is Nobody is Born a Maximalist. The idea being is you don't wake up, you don't suddenly hear about all cryptocurrency and go, well, Bitcoin is definitely the one. It has the best consensus mechanism, best incentives for miners. It's most technically proficient. Like there's a bunch of stuff and you have to kind of figure it out. Some get it very quickly, just almost immediately. Some take some time. Some, the bag holders, are cultish because they have financial incentive for their thing to come back. There's a whole range of things. But I really think it's important for Bitcoiners to try and understand that gulf between their understanding and these people who are new to this. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think the whole part on the cults bit is super important because it does relate to Bitcoin. Because I think sometimes people lose their objectivity, and that's really important. So that's why I wanted to do this interview, because there are other scams out there I could touch. There are other, but they're not as interesting. This one's really interesting because there's a couple of key messages in there.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because I've been thinking, like, we've obviously aimed this at the general market, and not for the crypto world and not for the Bitcoiners. But this is why I was so pleased you got in touch, because I really want... I think I got in touch with you and said, please let me on your show.
No, wasn't there middle? Didn't somebody tweet saying you've got to get Jamie Bartlett on?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think there was something in between.
I was trying to amplify that, because I was like, I want to get on your show because I want to know what the Bitcoin people think about this and whether they feel any responsibility and what they can take from it.
I don't think they have any responsibility,
No.
actually. And I think, like I say, I think the responses will be mixed. I really do. My view, I think the reason we're speaking and we're doing this, well, firstly, I like to do them in person. And today I've managed to do one in my country, which is a lot easier than flying to like Taiwan or something. But is that I feel that I understand what you're trying to do with it, whereas I think some of the other podcasters maybe don't. And the people who understand what I'm doing and my approach will understand why I'm doing this interview, because I try and talk to the beginners and the no-coiners. Like, the more Bitcoin you are, the less I think my show is for you. I really don't. I think it's for the people who don't have a deep understanding of the technical and the economic side, or never gonna, or who are hardworking and come home at the end of the day and they're going to put the TV on and maybe they're going to spend half an hour on their computer reading about Bitcoin and buy some. That's who I'm trying to target. That's why your show worked for me.
Yeah, oh, that's cool, because that's the next wave of people, isn't it? I mean, that's what we're saying. We want this currency, and I like Bit. I didn't go into it as disliking cryptocurrencies, and some people were annoyed at me for having even said in a line in the final episode that Bitcoin's a really good idea and that cryptocurrencies could really help places like Uganda. They could actually bank, they could bank the unbanked. And that's what's really frustrating about this, is that they took some of the positive messages and then flipped them and used them to recruit people.
Bank the unbanked, that's so used at the moment.
So I got some criticism for that, because from people who are critics of every cryptocurrency, including Bitcoin, saying, why aren't you just hammering them all? So I didn't come into it as a critic, really, of crypto. Well,
Where
I
are you
suppose
now,
a bit of a critic, but definitely someone who's quite open-minded about it, I suppose. Just the same. But
Bitcoin or cryptocurrency? Be careful.
Yeah, I know.
Audience.
I'm conscious of who I'm talking to here.
No, don't worry. They'll give me.
I'm probably not even well enough qualified to really have a strong answer. But one thing that Tim Curry, who is like you, I think. I mean, he's a Bitcoiner through and through. I wouldn't say he's a maximalist, but he's definitely, Bitcoin is the one. There are some other interesting ones maybe, but I'll check them out. He says, and this is why he spent 2 years trying to call out OneCoin, and he was getting very annoyed that, Roger Ver's not doing this every day, or some, because he said, if we want to be self-regulating, which is what I want us to be, then we've got to fucking self-regulate. And that is going to mean we go out and call out the scams and tell ordinary people in an accessible way they understand they're being scammed. That's self-regulating. And if we don't do that, we are going to get regulated more by the government, because why would they? Should.
Yeah.
So he's like, when we talk about self-regulating, what do we actually mean by that? Surely one of the things we mean is protect ordinary people from the scammers. And I was like, yes, mate, that's exactly it. That's really important.
It's how the libertarians want society to be, to self-regulate.
Yeah, but self-regulate means people who understand it, actively going out on the level that ordinary people are going to get scammed and talking in a way they get to protect them.
Yeah.
Not just talking theoretically about setting up a self-governing foundation that looks after the consensus. That isn't the only bit of self-regulation. Self-regulation is the whole community figuring out how to protect people.
Well, listen, look, it was absolutely fascinating. There's so many bits of it we haven't even touched as well. Like other little bits in it. There's so many brilliant parts of the story. I'm going to encourage people to go and listen to it. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't think the story's over. I'm almost certain you're going to do something else, and I do look forward to it. But I think this is useful for Bitcoiners. And I think there's going to be people who are going to listen to this. They're going to go, I understand why you did this interview, Pete, and it's relevant and it's important, and they get what you've done. Others are just going to dismiss it and go, well, fuck the morons, let them get wrecked, whatever it is. But listen, I do appreciate it. You should close out by telling people how they can find it and how they can follow you, because you know.
Yeah. Well, it's on all the places you get all your podcasts. It's a BBC Sounds podcast, but it's available in other places as well. It's called The Missing Cryptoqueen. Download it.
And if people want to follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Jamie J. Bartlett. That's where I post most of this stuff. Right. Yeah, that's where it is.
Cool. Well, listen, appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Tim, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for coming on to this show. So, as I told you previously, I met up with Jamie a couple of days ago. I've listened to the whole of the Missing Cryptoqueen. I obviously heard your interaction with Jen, and I spoke to Jen today. And I think it's going to be a nice appendix to this interview with Jamie to have both yourself and Jen and just hear from you, because you know about my show, and I always think there's something we can learn from. And I actually feel, as Bitcoiners, there's something we can learn from this story, because I've always said I think there's a gulf between the understanding of Bitcoiners and new people who are coming into crypto. So just as a starting point, where does your story start with OKCoin? How did you come to be like a campaigner against it? How did you hear about it, and what started happening?
With OneCoin, on March 28th of 2015, I was contacted over Facebook about if I wanted to check out this new cryptocurrency. And I think that the person who contacted me probably had looked at my site and maybe seen that, I was posting Bitcoin stuff and things like this. Now, as a quick prereq to that, Paycoin had just begun crashing that year. And that was a drama of a crypto Ponzi scam that I'd been following closely on Bitcoin Talk and stuff like that. I went to North American Bitcoin Conference in hopes of actually seeing Josh Garza speak, and he didn't. But anyhow, so that was when I was introduced to OneCoin Scam and recognized as such within about 3 minutes.
And what was it that stood out for you that it was a scam? How did you know immediately?
So as soon as I went to the website, there are some things that you definitely need to look out for. One is just the amount of time that was put into the site, the talent in building it. If it has a good and professional presentation, which it didn't at that time, it certainly did at some point after that. But there was a lot of spelling and grammar errors, and as I've said before, the lexicon of the site was clearly not written by someone who understands or is familiar with cryptocurrency.
And what did this trigger you to do? Because obviously you decided to kind of get involved somehow to make people aware. What did this trigger you to do?
Yeah, immediately I told the person who had contacted me that this was a scam. I go, this company doesn't even take cryptocurrency, yet it's talking about Bitcoin and all these other things, and the only form of payment is traditional payment channels. And the whole idea of joining a club and paying to get involved in something like this is the antithesis of cryptocurrency itself. So I pretty much tried to leave it at that, although he was offended and really pushed me to watch a video about OneCoin mining, which at that point super sealed the deal for me, because that just blew it out of the water, and I knew absolutely 110% for sure that it was a scam by that point. So I forgot about it for a couple weeks, maybe 2 months, and I began to see a little bit more of this OneCoin thing begin popping up in news feeds on Facebook, on Twitter, and stuff like this. And soon I became aware that there was going to be a USA launch. And this was in July of 2015. So March, April, May, June, July. So 4 months later. And between that period of time in May, there had been a Dubai event in which there were, probably 3,000 people in one of the largest, theater type venues that I think I'd ever seen. And during that event, Ruja was saying that OneCoin was now backed by gold, and that they had this Aurum coin, and it was this joint venture, and this gold was secured in vaults deep under the sea that she and Sebastian had visited, right?
That sounds ridiculous.
Exactly. So how could I miss not going to this, this launch party here in the US? It was about an hour away from me. And I'm like, dude, I got to go check this out.
Uh-huh. So you were there. So you saw it all. So listen, one of the things that I think is the reason they've got away with this is because I actually wasn't that aware of OneCoin. Like, I'd heard about it and I knew it was a scam, but I hadn't paid any attention to it. And I think the reason being is, like, one of the things I explained to both Jamie and Jen is there's such a gap between Bitcoin and OneCoin, in that you have Bitcoin and you have some people who believe that anything that isn't Bitcoin is a scam, right? Anything. And then you have some people a bit more kind of like, you could say reasonable, but then it depends on your perspective. But there are a group of people then think there are some legitimate attempts to create something with a blockchain that isn't Bitcoin. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that is created with a blockchain that is a scam. And then there's OneCoin. OneCoin is so on its own as a scam, so not part of like CoinMarketCap. It doesn't have a blockchain. It can't be traded anywhere. It feels like for me, it kind of passed most people by. And that's what's allowed it to proliferate, because people like me have just completely ignored it. What do you think?
I think that when it comes to people who've gotten involved in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, there's two groups. One who've gotten in philosophically, and another who has gotten in from an investment standpoint and speculation standpoint. For me, when I got into crypto in March of 2013, I was just fascinated by it. I was studying the Ron Paul movement, and a friend introduced me. I listened to Andreas Antonopoulos, and I couldn't get enough of it for like 3 days. And it really took me time to digest what the real significance of this technology was and the implications for the world and for like the unbanked, which was a tagline that OneCoin adopted. And I think that there's maybe a difference in that and people who just, oh, Bitcoin has gone to the moon and I'm going to buy some Bitcoin. I'm going to buy some, shit coins and whatever. And, just wanting to see it the 10 times, the 10x, the 100x, whatever. Whereas I think that OneCoin really aligned with those more so that wanted to see a stratospheric rise like Bitcoin in this particular investment, but didn't want to do the due diligence. So people like you and I and a lot of people in the space on the philosophical side really took time to try to at least understand the rudimentary elements of how this even works. Whereas when OneCoin presented it, and with some people that speculate in the space, they just get in and it's an investment, it's gambling or whatever. I think that was a significant difference. And when OneCoin pitched that it was going to be the next Bitcoin and that we would do all the thinking for you, one-click mining, stuff like this, then that's what made people go, cool, I don't have to work. I don't have to really study this stuff. The company's going to take care of everything. Awesome.
Yeah. How did you end up coming to talk to Jen?
I was pretty much towards the end of 2015, after I went to this event, which was just a crazy bombastic, but rather small event. This guy named Dr. Breakthrough was smashing boards and smashing bricks and yelling at the top of his lungs, "You're all going to have a breakthrough here. You're going to have a breakthrough. We're going to break through finance. We're going to break through relationships. And all this stuff." And so, these amps just went to 11, right? And I interviewed, but not that I had a camera or a microphone or anything, but I interviewed some of the people that had been on stage that had completed their 5th level of education in, OneCoin. So I wanted to see what their, fluency in cryptocurrency was, which was literally 0. And so I was blown away by it. Now, at the end of that year, there came out that Ruja was on the cover of this Forbes magazine. And I knew for sure it couldn't be true. And within a few days, it was proven that it was a second cover in Forbes Bulgaria, etc. It was an advertisement piece. At that point, I knew that this company was willing to sink a ton of marketing dollars behind it and do a lot of deceptive advertising and propaganda. And I was beginning to see how people were falling for it. So Ruja had been made to be this, goddess on a pedestal, which everyone just kind of ended up worshiping. They said that she had a 200 plus IQ and, a lot of bombastic claims. And I could just tell that people were, had this admiration and this wasn't going to change. And it was only picking up steam. At that point, I recognized 3 things specifically. Number one, this is going to be bad for the regulatory environment coming up for cryptocurrency. It's going to cause hyper-regulation. It's going to raise the barrier of entry, and it's going to stifle innovation from startups that are working out of their garage because now new compliance laws and licensing are going to require a company or a wealth entity to come in and inject $250,000 or whatever into this company with these brilliant ideas and these genius guys that are getting together on this project, and they're going to lose 51% of their interest in the company rather than being able to build it just because of a-holes like Ruja Ignatova and OneCoin. So that was number one. Number two was that this is going to be very bad for public perception. Public perception of cryptocurrency based on a scam that I felt at that time would already grow pretty big, and which I wrote in 2016 would be bigger than Mt. Gox. That's not good for the general public. That affects the general public's perception of what is Bitcoin, what is cryptocurrency. When I would tell friends that were not in the crypto space about OneCoin and how ridiculous it is, they would repeat and say, oh yeah, I heard that there's a lot of controversy with Bitcoin. I'm all, no, I said OneCoin, but they heard Bitcoin because the words cryptocurrency and OneCoin, the only thing they knew, and many of them know, is Bitcoin. So that was number two. And number three was the human element. Seeing Paycoin go down and watching, other scams like MMM and MMM Global destroy lives, people committing suicides and things like that. There was a human element to it. It was never my first, concern. My first concern wasn't, I'm philanthropic and want to save a bunch of people. No, you're coming into my office, you're coming into my community, you're taking a shit there, and we don't let that happen. That's what I wanted to push out.
So that interaction with Jen, I've obviously heard it a couple of times, and I've now got a copy of it. Look, it's fascinating. It's. I see two sides. I felt very sorry for her and a lot of empathy with her, but I felt your anger, and I think your anger wasn't at her. I think mainly your anger is like a lot of Bitcoiners who keep seeing scam after scam after scam, and eventually you lose your patience. You lose your patience with telling people, and you were tough with her, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And to lead up to your question, I kind of skipped over that with that interlude, but I would start finding and trying to confront with logic and with reason and with math and documentation some of the top leaders that were promoting this scheme. And so during this course, I would contact them on LinkedIn. I would contact them on Facebook. If there were phone numbers, I would call them. If they did, podcasts or videos or anything like this, I would contact them. I was successful in having a few interviews that were semi-amicable, that were just discussions, that were talking about the facts, talking about the math, talking about the documented lies and propaganda that you couldn't deny about OneCoin. And this is what led me to Jen about a year later in November of 2016. And during this whole amount of time, the lies and the propaganda just began to exponentiate. And so when I saw Jen on Facebook promoting OneCoin, promoting propaganda, then she was just one person of many whom I reached out to determine a few things, whether she was a scammer or whether she was a victim unwittingly promoting a scam. And it took me some time, and even after that call, I still wasn't sure. And by the way, that call was about 20 minutes long, maybe 30 minutes. And of course, BBC would use the most intense moments of it. So that wasn't how the entire conversation went. It started, pretty mellow and conversational, but that's the direction that it went. And it's very difficult to break through that layer of ice or that shell in order to let anything that is logical sink into someone who's that deep.
Well, that's a problem across all of crypto, right? And I said to Jamie, I think the most interesting part of the whole 8 episodes was the bit where he's with the psychologist talking about cults. And the reason I thought that was so interesting, because if you're a Bitcoiner and you're talking to a Bcasher, it is close to impossible to convince them that they're wrong and that Bitcoin is right. It's very difficult to convince someone who's in deep with Ripple that Ripple is just a company, centralized company, selling off millions, hundreds of millions every quarter to finance a business at their cost. It's very difficult to convince somebody who's deep in ETH that it's almost impossible for this to scale without it becoming centralized. And so that was the thing I felt was most interesting. And for me, as somebody who's into Bitcoin, who's often talking to new people coming into the space, whether it's friends or listeners of the show, you find people when they first arrive in the world of cryptocurrency, it's very rare that someone arrives and goes, oh, this Bitcoin thing's amazing. Everything else is terrible. I'm all in Bitcoin. Quite often people are wondering, what is Bitcoin? What is Bitcoin Cash? What are all these other tokens? What should I invest in? And it's very hard. So have you learned anything from this in terms of trying to educate people and help people understand and navigate this?
Well, one thing that I told Jen is that her and I had very similar experiences when we got involved in quote unquote cryptocurrency. And OneCoin was super effective in mimicking that experience, with the taglines and with everything else. But so she was convinced, and she was as excited as I was about Bitcoin when I got into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency. But one thing that I think is super important is that words matter. And one word that we see thrown around way too much in the crypto and the blockchain space is the word scam. And by calling this project a scam and that project a scam, rather than entering into intellectual debate about it or about its people, its founders, its history, and things like that, then it cheapens the word. And people say, well, everything's a scam, everything, In fact, OneCoiners will say, back in the early days, they will say, well, just Google, is Microsoft a scam? You're going to find it's a scam. Is Kentucky Fried Chicken a scam? You're going to find out that Kentucky Fried Chicken is a scam. And so, we have to be more articulate when we're communicating if we're trying to deliver a proper message.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And, it's really tough, running this podcast. I'm Bitcoin only now for a number of reasons. If somebody came to me with a project that they said, this uses a blockchain and it's a legitimate idea, I don't want my starting point to be, you're a scammer, fuck off. I don't want it to be that, because whilst I'm skeptical that anything else will successfully use a blockchain for something, there may. And I think the overuse of the word scam actually, it kind of gives a layer of protective cover for something like OneCoin.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was a paid hater and a blogger and, all these things. I had never done any blogs. I was never paid for, hating on OneCoin or whatever. And the thing that's so funny is that there is what's called a Ponzi playbook. And this Ponzi playbook takes place in every Ponzi scam that there is. And these, keywords, phrases, and expressions and accusations just play out, and they're used in every one of them. From BitConnect, you look at old BitConnect videos, and you guys are just jealous Bitcoiners. You guys are just haters. It's the same thing, and that's how a lot of these scams end up, growing and forming that protective layer around their victims.
So how do you feel about it all now, like reflecting on it? Is it something you're still actively involved in, or have you moved on from it?
Yeah, no, it is, but if I were to do it again, I wouldn't probably, just because, when I saw it, I'm all, okay, well, this will be over in 6 months. Let's see if we could, destroy it in 4 or whatever, or, help bring it down in 4 months. And then after 6 months, Forbes cover comes out and this and that, and all of a sudden it's gaining steam. I'm like, man, this thing could last another year. Well, now we're at half a decade, and there's and $5 to $15 billion. I would talk about this on Reddit, and I would post some of the facts and the math and things like this in order to try to gauge participation from the community to try to actively extinguish this fire that was happening in our house, so to speak, or at least in our front yard. And I actually got kicked out of Reddit for a while for that. And I ended up speaking with one of the guys that kind of reinstated me or whatever. But my point is that the crypto community did ignore it because it was so obvious a scam to us, but it just wasn't to everyone else. So most people just didn't pay attention. Yeah.
Do you see Jen as a victim, or do you hold her responsible at all for any of the decisions she made?
Well, I mean, I think everyone is responsible to do their own due diligence, but Jen is a standout as far as anyone I've ever seen in OneCoin, in that she was the only person to step up. And once she had realized her mistake, she reapproached me, by the way, and she still had resentment towards me, but she wanted answers to questions that she didn't have and she wasn't getting from the company or her leaders. And my answers, and I say but I'm not the only one that thought this. There's a lot of us. Not a lot of us, but a group of people internationally that have contributed to, documenting and taking this down. So it's very important that this isn't just about me. There's a lot of, a number of people that have done this. But we would provide the facts, sources, information that can be checked and verified. Don't trust, verify.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Okay, so just finally, just to close out on this, and I think, you know what, I think it'd be great for you and I to actually do a show one day. I like your vibe, but I do have a closing question. Do you think there's anything that Bitcoiners can learn from the OneCoin scam?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want shitty people in your community. You don't want jerks. You don't want scammers. We have to self-police, because regardless of whether we do, the regulators are going to do that for us. But if we can take care of some of our own business, then maybe it's not going to be as harsh. And that's part of the reason that I started this. There was a fourth reason that I did kind of continue down the path, and that was if myself and the people that are coming against this and exposing it can give people that are involved in this a paradigm shift to understand the difference between a single point of failure and a trustless system, between centralization and a decentralized distributed system, then that's a lot of people that can come into our community having had a bad experience, that can turn it around and come out with something successful or positive to say about that experience.
I think that's a really great way to end it. All right, Tim, look, I do appreciate this. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, I think we should try and get together and do a show together one day.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Morning, Jen. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Peter. I'm well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
No problem. Nice to talk to you. I've obviously been listening to you over the last week in various parts of Jamie's docu-podcast series, and you really stood out to me because it was quite heartbreaking listening to you sometimes, and I found myself wanting to reach through the podcast and just kind of give you a hug and see how you are. I hope when people have listened to mine, they've also listened to the Crypto Queen and got to hear from you. But so firstly, I just want to ask, how are you? Are you okay? How are you coping?
Yeah, I'm coping. It's been a really tough 2.5 years since finding out it's been a scam. Yeah, it's getting easier.
Okay. Well, for me, I want this episode to be helpful for Bitcoin people to try to maybe understand what it's like for somebody who's new to hearing about cryptocurrencies and some of the things they hear or get confused with. And I think there's a real learning exercise for us in this. So I'm going to ask you just a few questions, and we'll work through this. But just to begin with, when you first heard about OneCoin, had you heard about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin before, or was OneCoin the first time you heard about it?
Vaguely, I'd heard of Bitcoin. My background previously was in IT. I'd IT clients. So I'd heard a way back in 2010, just heard about it and talking, but that was it. So I hadn't heard anything more about it until my best friend approached me. And she spoke about it. She knew I was looking for an investment opportunity to place the money that my dad had left me. So she says, Jen, have a look at this. The first time I didn't take her up on it. It just went over my head.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time there was an urgency with it to look at it. And that's what I did. But up until that point, not really. I was vaguely.
And what was your kind of awareness of Bitcoin? What did you know about it? What did you think it was?
Well, I knew it was digital money.
Mm-hmm.
But how that was created or the technology behind it, I had no clue.
Okay. And with OneCoin, your first kind of interaction with it, was it via their website or YouTube videos? How did you first start reading about OneCoin?
Well, as I said, it was my best friend.
Yeah.
Someone has approached her. And then it was a phone call. She said, speak to this chap. So it was a phone call. And he interacted the Bitcoin story into OneCoin.
Okay.
So you really felt as though OneCoin was Bitcoin. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but for someone who didn't have the knowledge that I have now, it was very plausible. And then he invited me on to a webinar. And these webinars at that point, I invested early February 2016. And I went on to my first webinar where there was about 100 people on it. And that was my first interaction. It was an hour and a half webinar. And it was all Bitcoin. It was really all about the Bitcoin story.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So when I came off that webinar at the end of it, I really felt OneCoin was a legitimate cryptocurrency. It had an exchange. It was growing in value. And of course, they interacted with the Bitcoin story. I was showing with Ruja Ignatova, you see her at a 15-minute presentation with The Economist. You're showing her on the Forbes cover, which you think is the Forbes cover, front cover of a magazine, but I know now it was a second page advertisement in Bulgaria, Forbes. And also Financial IT magazine. So this is all in the webinar. And I really thought that, this woman's really so clever. And being a businesswoman previously, I looked up, I just thought it was an amazing investment opportunity. This is what I'd been looking for, to, somewhere really safe to put my dad's money.
Okay. So I won't repeat the whole story because a lot of that's covered in Jamie's, and I want them to listen to that. But what was the total amount you invested?
Personally, I invested €10,000.
Okay. And you encouraged some friends and family to invest?
250,000 in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
And over what period was that?
That was, I would say, about 3 months, a 3-month period.
Okay. And when was your first suspicions that this wasn't legitimate, this was a scam? What first triggered that?
Well, they told me that I could get my initial investment back out after 12 weeks, after all the splits had taken place. This is so if you buy a OneCoin package, depending on what package you buy, you have a number of splits. And basically what that was a doubling of the tokens you received in whatever package you bought. So they said after my splits had taken place and the packages that I had bought, it would be 12 weeks. Well, that didn't happen. The money didn't come out. And then when you questioned it, you were said it was said to you, why do you want to take it out anyway? Look at what's happening to Bitcoin, the value. We're going to be the number one cryptocurrency. Why would you want to take your money out? So, in a way, I think at that point, that was the first red flag. But I think for me, it was like, internally, I gave myself maybe an excuse saying, okay, right, yeah, that makes sense. Why would I want to take it out? So that...
Did you have any sense of the technology? So, for example, with Bitcoin, once you get into it, you understand there's a blockchain that you can send your Bitcoin from one person to another. It's censorship resistant. You can look up the ledger. but they're quite complicated technical concepts for somebody who's new to this. Were you aware of any of the kind of that technology going on with Bitcoin, and were you aware of any of the technology that was there with OneCoin, and there was some kind of disparities between the two, or were you oblivious to it all?
I was absolutely oblivious to the technology. OneCoin, they say there's education levels, and it doesn't even cover the blockchain technology. So no, at that point I was absolutely oblivious. But I do remember one chap had asked me. I invested in February, so we're going down about August, September time, and this one chap said to me, "What about nodes?" And I thought, what? And so I went back to who I had connections with in OneCoin, who I was told to speak to. And he said to me, "You're being difficult, Jen. Why do you want to know about nodes? You don't need to know about that." I said, "Yes, I do. I want to know about it. But what's this guy asking me? You should know about it, should you not? You don't need to know about that." So that was another red flag come August, September. Also in that period from February to August, September time, bank accounts were closing down. Their business bank accounts, and then another one would pop up. So, sorry, I'm off the track there, but no, I didn't have any clue to the technology at all.
When did Tim Curry come into the picture?
Oh, bless Tim. Tim came into the picture in November, end of November, one Friday evening.
Is that 2017?
2016, sorry.
2016, yeah.
Yeah. He came in, and one Friday evening through Messenger, and he was like, "You scammer." And I was absolutely horrified. And then I saw his name, and I thought, that's that guy they have been speaking about in the OneCoin groups. People had mentioned him, and these OneCoin leaders, they said, "Oh, block him, he's a hater, he's crazy, don't take it, just block him automatically." But I wanted to say, "Hey, how dare you say that about me? I'm an honest person." I was so offended.
And you had the conversation with him, which I've heard.
Yeah, I had the conversation, and that lasted over that weekend. It was like a 40-hour non-stop debate. So eventually, I gave him the link for the Zoom and said, "I want to speak to you face to face."
Okay.
And that's what's on the podcast.
And at what point? So you had the conversation with him. His approach was quite blunt, and I'm used to that from Bitcoiners. When they see something that's a scam, they say scam, and they just won't have it, or they'll call it a fucking scam. They'll say it to your face. They're quite blunt about that. Obviously, you were very defensive. After the Zoom call, what kind of happened for you?
After the Zoom call, I spoke to my best friend that had initially, shown me this opportunity, and at the time, and I said to her, "This guy was so passionate. There's something not ringing true here." I said, I'm going to read the information he's left, and there was a lot of information he gave me that weekend. It took me about 3 months to go through it and digest it. So I'm just going to sit back and watch within the groups and what's been said, because I couldn't really ask questions. I was at that stage with the OneCoin leaders from the UK that I was already asking questions, so I was told it was been difficult. You see people getting removed from the groups for asking questions. So I had that fear that would happen if I asked too many questions, and then I wouldn't have no clue as to what I thought was a genuine investment at that time. So yeah, Tim, it took me about another 3 months after.
Yes. So what was the kind of the light bulb moment where you went, okay, and you came to the acceptance that this was a scam?
It was back in January, February time, and a friend had called me who invested 9,000 in it. He says, "Jen, one Sunday morning, there's something wrong here. I was speaking to 2 Blue Diamond leaders in OneCoin, and they're saying there's no blockchain." And then at that point, I went, "Oh, there's something, all the information Tim had left me, what the previous red flags I had, and it was just, oh no, there's something wrong. So there was a Blue Diamond leader, a message, and I said, listen, I want to know about the blockchain. I want you to give me information about this. And he came back and he left a voice note, and that's when he said it was a SQL server, blockchain technology behind it. And I thought, what? Literally, I kid you not, Peter, my legs went like jelly, and before I knew it, I was at the side of my bed on the floor, because that was the light bulb moment.
Okay.
I knew it wasn't possible.
So the money's gone, all the money for your friends and family's gone. Did you have to break it to all of them?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that was probably one of the hardest things you've done.
Worst things ever.
And so
I opened up the communication with Tim, because I'd blocked him previously, or did what I was told. And I opened it up after the following day, and I said, Tim, you said you had a contact for UK police. He gave me it, spoke to the police, they confirmed the investigation, and they believed it was a Ponzi fraud scam. So the following day, held a webinar and told, there was 13 members, and told them, with family, I bought their packages, so it was friends. And I'm still friends with them all, except for one who continued to do it, who continued to promote this.
Okay.
So it was horrendous.
What's the impact been?
The impact, initially, it's just absolutely devastation. It is utter devastation. It takes the wind from you, and it's not something that you recover from overnight, because it's shock, utter shock, and disbelief. Even when the DC from London City Police Fraud Laundering Unit told me they had been investigating and they believed it was a scam, and there's still that bit of doubt had come in going, this can't be true. This isn't true. And it's just shock.
And in terms of like the impact and the kind of devastation, how much is that is due to the loss of money, and how much is down to the actual feeling of of the deceit of being scammed? Like, is it just the money loss, or is it the shame? Like, what kind of different emotions are going on with this?
It comes in waves. Initially, it's the shock and the money. Your money's gone. So when that hits, that's just like it's just like a gut. It just hits you hard. And then for me, it was all the people that I had spoke to about this and the money they had lost. So that was next, and just so upset, so much disbelief, really.
And so what now for you? So I believe you're running some kind of support group, or explain to me the group you're running or involved in.
Yeah, it's called the OneCoin Victim Support Group.
Okay.
And that group initially opened up to update the 13 people in that group about what had happened in April 2017. Very quickly after it, we were getting messages from other OneCoin members, can we join? And now 2.5 years later, we have over 7,000 members. We have WhatsApp victim support groups covering every continent, and a Facebook group, and it's increasing every day, members requesting to join. And they're devastated. They're absolutely devastated. I'm speaking to people every single day who are either, they go between shocked, depressed, in tears, and some suicidal, because they have literally sold their homes to buy these packages. No joke. Their life savings gone. I was speaking to one Asian woman the other day, Muslim woman, because the Muslim community was targeted also. And she said, I invested Jen 700, but I can, I'm not too bad about that. She said, but my concern is my elderly aunt sold her house, £80,000. to buy these OneCoin packages. Since the elderly aunt has found out it's a fraud, she's not been able to speak, and she's now seriously ill in hospital. That's just one of so many stories of what's happened here.
What would you say if there might be some kind of harsh critics who would come back to you and other people and say, well, you know, it's obviously a scam. It was kind of ridiculous. You clearly didn't do your research. Why would you invest all your money in this? What would you say to somebody who was kind of tough and new like that?
I would say I didn't have the understanding. You know, this is financially hard times. And if I can only speak for me personally, I was going through some hardships, as, you know, it happens in life. And my dad died, I was still grieving, and I sometimes ask myself, maybe was I not in the right frame of mind? I didn't do, you know, the proper due diligence I should have. I never thought I would be scammed in my life. I thought I was wise enough. And it happened to me. And could it happen to me now? No, because I've more knowledge. You know, I've the blockchain specialists in the group, crypto specialists that help and support victims, they've given me so much education. I'm at a different place now. I wasn't then. And also there wasn't as much information about OneCoin then.
One thing I've observed, which I said to Jamie yesterday, you know, people in Bitcoin and crypto are very quick to call out scams. And for some people, almost everything that isn't Bitcoin is a scam. But there is such a gulf between, say, Bitcoin and OneCoin. Like, for somebody who's in Bitcoin, it's so obviously a scam, it's kind of been ignored. Like, when I heard about it, I just ignored it. And I totally just forgot about it. I was like, oh, that's just a Ponzi. That's just a scam. I didn't even talk about it. And it was only when I listened to Jamie's podcast that I realized the scale of it. But I've always ignored it because I've always just thought, oh, it's such a scam. It was so obvious, and I think that's one of the things that maybe that hasn't actually helped it. You know, if it had a blockchain, for example, and maybe it was listed on CoinMarketCap or people were talking about it in crypto communities, then maybe there would have been more information out there. But it was so far removed from the crypto industry and so obviously a scam that I think it's not been picked up as much.
This is the question. OneCoin is, and there's a lot of other crypto scams. People have been contacting me, say, Jen, you know, can you raise awareness about this one and that one? And I'm thinking, why? This is my question to the blockchain and crypto industry. Like, I feel there's a lot of silence about it, and is it not time to come together and speak about it and highlight these scams, because they're tarnishing? Well, I mean, I absolutely think Bitcoin is it's amazing what it can do for people, and I just feel that these crypto fake scams are not going to go away. They're in this industry.
Yeah. Well, one of the difficult things, Jen, is that because Bitcoin itself is decentralized, there isn't really a central body who can take care of this and regulate it. You can have state level regulations, like the UK can have regulations and the US can have regulations, but a lot of people would say there isn't actually a crypto industry. There is Bitcoin and then there's a bunch of other stuff. The way I see it, there's actually different levels. So there's Bitcoin, and then there's questionably, arguably legitimate attempts to use a blockchain to do something else. Now, some people will say they're all scams. Some people will say they're legitimate. There are then blockchain projects which are just straight up scams. And then there are things like OneCoin, which is just a scam. It's not even got a blockchain. So there's so many gaps between, say, what a hardcore Bitcoiner would see and OneCoin. It's very difficult to therefore kind of offer the support for something like OneCoin. And then add to that is that the scam is being so used so regularly, sometimes it's also lost meaning. Because, like I say, for some people there are legitimate scams, and there are other people who say anything that isn't Bitcoin is a scam. So it just becomes quite difficult to identify what actually is a scam. I would be at odds with some Bitcoiners where I don't think it's useful to call everything that's not Bitcoin a scam, because I believe some people, their ideas might be misguided. They are still legitimately trying to do something. I think a straight up scam is something where somebody set out to rip people off, and I think that's a more useful use of the term scam. I think we should separate what are stupid ideas and what are straight up scams. But it's very difficult.
Yeah, I know, and I don't know what will happen in the next few years, but I know here's another thing to think about, and I've thought about it, Peter. A chap said to me yesterday, in fact, oh, he works in blockchain, and he said, yeah, I was approached, Bulgarian, oddly enough, and he said a Bulgarian company approached me. He said, and there was lots of red flags, and I said, oh, this, and he said, this is a scam. They said, that's all right, we'll just get sued. So what? You know?
Yeah. So last thing I want to finish on with you is that since this, you've obviously learned more about Bitcoin. What is it you've learned about Bitcoin, and why do you now understand that is a legitimate project? Like, what is it that clicked for you that made Bitcoin legitimate and that you trust it?
The financial independence, the technology behind it. But the financial independence for me, Peter, when I was 17, I became pregnant and I was homeless. And I remember going to the bank, and because I was 16. And I went to the bank and I couldn't get a bank account because I wasn't credible. I was only a young girl. That fear has never ever left me. So when I was divorced 15 years ago, that I remember having to change bank accounts, and that fear was still with me. What if I'm not credible for a bank account? Even though I knew I was. What if I'm not? And that fear is, because I've been thinking about it, and I think for me, I know what it's like when a bank says to you, you're not credible. And the difficulties that brings with it. So for me, Bitcoin is amazing in that respect. And it does bring financial independence. So for me, it's thumbs up.
Yeah, I think I say it's the potential of financial independence. Obviously, you can create a wallet, you can get Bitcoin. I still think we've got a number of hurdles to get over. If somebody can't get a bank account, can they survive with a Bitcoin wallet? And Bitcoin, I mean, there's issues to do with volatility of price and being able to use it, but the potential for financial independence is there. So I'm with you on that. Well, listen, look, it's been great to talk to you. I'm very sorry you've been through that, but you're not alone, and you're not even alone just with OneCoin. So many people have got caught up in so many scams. Hundreds of millions, maybe billions have been lost. You're not alone. I think the work you're doing now to try and support people and help people who've been scammed by OneCoin is great. And, I hope you don't beat yourself up about this for too much longer, because it was heartbreaking to hear you on the documentary. And I know it sucks, but lots of people have been sucked in. You're not alone. So I do hope you get to a point where you find peace with this and can get on with your life.
Fingers crossed, Peter. Thanks very much. I really appreciate your kind words there.
No worries.
Smile. Thank you.
Anything you ever need, you just reach out to me.
Oh, bless. Thanks very much.
All right. So what did you make of that one? That's pretty amazing, really, when you think about the numbers. Jamie was very cool, and it was very cool to meet up with him and talk about this. I loved his work on the Missing Cryptoqueen, and also I said that 2-part documentary he made called The Secrets of Silicon Valley, which was also very good. And I recorded a separate show about that. That's going to go out in Defiance in a couple of weeks. I find the OneCoin scam and story pretty fascinating. How billions managed to get invested without, I didn't even realize, I mean, some of you may have, but the full scale of this project and how it spread like wildfire around the world. I find it really interesting to see how the community also built up around it. So if you go and listen to the Cryptoqueen podcast, you'll hear a bit where he speaks to somebody about the psychology of these scams and how cults build up around them. And that definitely happens in other projects. You've seen that. You can see it with the Ripple guys, you can see it with the ETH guys. I think you can easily at times apply that to the way Bitcoiners think. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. It was also great to hear from Jen and Tim too. Jen's story is one of my favourite parts of the podcast. I think it's very easy to write her off and go, oh, she was an idiot, what was she doing? But I think that's sometimes the gulf in understanding that maybe people in Bitcoin have, and those who don't. Some people just want to invest some money and make some money, and they are easily duped. And I think we need to be slightly more compassionate to what people can go through here. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for Jamie for coming on. Also, thanks to Jen and Tim. Really appreciate the time of all of you. If you do have any feedback, you can hit me up. My email address is hello@whatbitcoindid.com. Also, as ever, thank you to everyone who supports the show. It doesn't matter what you do. If you just listen and share, whether you leave me a review or even if you're my sponsors, thank you so much. There's a list of things you can do if you want to support the show, all up on my website. Just head over to whatbitcoindid.com, click on the support section. If you've got 5 minutes, if you can lend a hand, maybe you'll go and leave a review or something and help me out. But yeah, that's all up on my website. As I said, I'm out in New York. I'm here for one more day. I've recorded a couple of interviews already. I'm recording 3 more today, so it's going to be pretty busy. Tomorrow I'm heading out to Cleveland, Ohio. Then I'm going to be over to Indianapolis for my first time. I'm going to be hooking up with Luke Martin. This is 2 years after we recorded the very first What Bitcoin Did show, which is very cool. So looking forward to that. And then hopefully I'm going to be here in San Francisco, LA, Atlanta, Washington, Houston, Austin and Hawaii, though I'm not sure the order of cities, but yes, lots of other interviews planned. Anyway, got any questions, hit me up. It's hello@whatbitcoindid.com.